Chapter 951. In fact, Xiang Chong was not late. He came just in time. If he had come earlier, he would have been in time for Chu Xiu to kill Li Jiaodi. Maybe he would have been involved in the battle. However, looking at Lin Fengyu's corpse on the ground and Li Jiaodi, whose body was nowhere to be seen, Xiang Chong was dumbfounded. After he reacted, he roared at Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu! How dare you?" Chu Xiu said faintly, "I have always been bold." "I wonder which part of me are you referring to, Your Highness?" Xiang Chong pointed at Chu Xiu and roared angrily while trembling, "How dare you kill Li Jiaodi?" Chu Xiu stood with his hands behind his back and asked very naturally, "Why wouldn't I dare?" Chu Xiu's bold words directly stunned Xiang Chong. Why wouldn't he dare? Could it be that he, Chu Xiu, had done any less audacious things? However, the problem was that Li Jiaodi and Lin Fengyu were his subordinates. Even if Xiang Chong was an idiot, he knew that his subordinates were killed. If he did not care, where would his prestige be? Just as he was about to say something, Daoist Wuyang pulled Xiang Chong and whispered, "Your Highness, it's best not to have a conflict with Chu Xiu for the time being." Xiang Chong looked at Daoist Wuyang in confusion. "My subordinates were killed by Chu Xiu and my face was almost swollen. How dare you tell me not to have a conflict with Chu Xiu?" Daoist Wuyang smiled bitterly and said, "Your Highness, after you ascend the throne, you can do whatever you want to Chu Xiu. However, the situation is sensitive now. What's the use of getting angry? Can you disband the Jianghu Hall or kill Chu Xiu? Even His Majesty can't do this. If you do this, it will only make the Northern Yen more chaotic. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Your Highness, you're a man who does great things. Could it be that you can't endure this little bit of time?" Xiang Chong was already relying on Daoist Wuyang. In his opinion, Daoist Wuyang was a steady and experienced man. What he said was indeed reasonable. Xiang Chong turned to Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Official Chu, do not forget that this is Northern Yen territory. You may be a man of Jianghu, but you are also the governor of the Northern Yen Jianghu clan. You are a subject of the Northern Yen. There are some rules that you have to follow." After saying that, Xiang Chong left hatefully with his men. Only Daoist Wuyang glanced at Chu Xiu before he left. There was a different look in his eyes. Mei Qinglian said at the side, "It seems that Daoist Wuyang, that old guy, is quite important to Xiang Chong." Chu Xiu said faintly, "Daoist Wuyang is considered a veteran in Jianghu. If he can't even deal with Xiang Chong, then he is too useless. Alright, go back. Tell your men to withdraw their forces and return to the Jianghu Hall. Don't fight head-on against some insignificant provocations. It's not too late to settle the score in the future." Chu Xiu hadn't expected this to happen. Lin Fengyu was an idiot, so Chu Xiu wouldn't be surprised if he did something stupid. However, it was strange that the fire slave, who was usually a shrewd guy, had actually lost his mind and stayed here to fight to the death with them. Of course, this was a good thing for Chu Xiu. Although it caused some trouble, it could also let the other disciples of the Jianghu Hall feel the cohesiveness of the Jianghu Hall. Chu Xiu was preparing to reverse the situation in the Jianghu Hall at the Coronation Hall. Therefore, he kept a low profile for the rest of the time. However, the entire Inma clan was in an uproar because of this strange matter. Chu Xiu actually killed Li Jiaodi. This matter had a huge impact on the big shots of the Inma clan. Even Ren Qianli, who stood on the side of Chu Xiu, was speechless after hearing the news. He secretly thought that Chu Xiu was too bold. Over the years, regardless of whether it was the righteous path or the evil path, it was the biggest taboo among the taboo. Although there had never been a complete ban on fratricide, even if there was, it was done in secret. But now, Chu Xiu killed Li Jiaodi openly. What would the other people of the Inma clan think? Not only the big shots of the Inma clan, but even the other disciples of the Inma clan would be affected. In their opinion, if the big shots could kill each other without any scruples, then wouldn't they also have no scruples? Therefore, as soon as this matter came out, someone immediately convened the entire Immortal clan to start a meeting. This time, they chose another place for the meeting and did not call Wuxia. In their opinion, the fair elder Wei had changed. He had become partial to Chu Xiu and ignored the interests of the Immortal clan. He was no longer one of them. In the dark underground stronghold, Situ Chi, the sect master of the Ghost Underworld sect, who had a conflict with Chu Xiu before, said angrily, "This is outrageous. This is outrageous. He killed his own people in public. Does Chu Xiu still care about the Immortal clan? Does he still care about the rules? There must be an explanation for this matter. Otherwise, what will become of the Immortal clan? We should just disband." Situ Chi had offended Chu Xiu before. Now that Li Jiaodi, who had also offended Chu Xiu, was dead, Situ Chi felt a little disappointed. He, Chu Xiu, really dared to kill people at all costs. The others present also agreed. Even those who had been neutral before, such as the Earth Devil Cultivator, Yu Moya and the Ghost Dragon Cave Lord, Wu Ma Hai, felt that Chu Xiu had indeed gone too far this time. It was normal for the Immortal clan to have conflicts with each other. Even they were not of one mind. But even if they were not of one mind, they were still in an alliance and had the same label on them. Even if you killed people secretly, it would be fine. But you killed people in public. How would the righteous path look at us? How would the bright demon look at us? How shameful. Only Qin Chaoxian stood up and said, "Everyone, calm down. Although Chu Xiu is usually tough, he is not that kind of crazy person. He should know what the consequences of killing Li Jiaodi are. So, is there something hidden in this?" Qin Chaoxian's Scarlet Drill Demon sect had already formed its own clan. For him, the existence of the Immortal clan or not didn't mean much. So, maintaining the stability of the Immortal clan was the most important thing. It didn't matter who Chu Xiu killed, as long as he didn't kill him. Moreover, Qin Chaoxian also hated Li Jiaodi. They had had conflicts before. Situ Chi waved his hand and said, "Hidden story? What hidden story could make Chu Xiu kill his own people on the spot? There must be an explanation for this. Everyone, let's go to Northern Yen. Even if we ask Chu Xiu to come to Eastern Qi, he probably won't come." Then, Situ Chi glanced at Qin Chaoxian and said indifferently, "Sect Master Qin, we understand that you have a different opinion, but you better not tell Wuxia about what happened today." Qin Chaoxian nodded indifferently and said, "Don't worry, I'm not that kind of person. But the Scarlet Drill Demon sect won't get involved in this matter. If you want to go to Northern Yen, you can go." Situ Chi did not force Qin Chao when he heard that he did not want to go first. In any case, they had enough people, which was enough to give Chu Xiu absolute pressure. However, Qin Chaoxian looked at their backs and shook his head slightly. These people were all itinerant cultivators. Even though Situ Chi was the sect master of the Ghost Underworld sect, there were only a few people in his sect. They didn't understand what Chu Xiu's current power represented. If they went rashly, they would only be rebuffed. He would only lower his head if he had a request. Right now, Chu Xiu did not have any requests from the Mo clan. Martial artists of the Devil Dao rarely came to the land of Northern Yen. It should be said that martial artists of the Immortal clan rarely came. Because Northern Yen had the Great Light Temple and was not as big as Eastern Qi, the diabolism cultivators who came to Northern Yen were restricted. This time, many people noticed that Situ Chi had brought many diabolism cultivators to Northern Yen. The Taoist and Buddhist branches in Yanjing City had just finished a big battle, so they didn't have the energy to deal with it. The imperial court naturally noticed it, but they didn't do anything. It was even Xiang Long who gave the order. The news that Chu Xiu had killed Li Jiaodi on the street had spread. The Northern Yan imperial court didn't think that the Yinma clan was Chu Xiu's reinforcements. They were more likely to cause trouble for him. Xiang Long was happy to see Chu Xiu fall out with the Yinma clan. He couldn't be happier, so how could he stop it? At this time, Situ Chi and several Yinma clan leaders were in the hall of the Jianghu clan, but Chu Xiu hadn't come out yet. Chu Xiu didn't come out, so Mei Qinglian came to greet him. After all, she was the only one who had contact with the Yinma clan. Serving everyone a cup of tea, Wu Ma Hai said with a smile, "Little Mei, you seem to be doing well at Chu Xiu's place. It seems that you're going to use Chu Xiu's power to rebuild the Yinma clan?" Compared to the people present, Mei Qinglian was just a junior, so everyone could call her a little girl. Hearing this, Mei Qinglian shook her head, then nodded and said, "I do have this idea, but Senior Wuma, do you know how difficult it is to build a clan? I don't have the talent in this area, so I'm just waiting for an opportunity to find a few successors and let them rebuild the Yinma clan. Relying on the power of the Jianghu clan, I'll slowly develop it. When I'm strong enough, I'll be independent. Since I'm going to rebuild the clan, I'll have to be presentable. Otherwise, it'll be embarrassing to bring out a few kittens." Hearing this, Situ Chi's face immediately darkened. He felt that Mei Qinglian was indirectly scolding him. A few kittens? Wasn't she talking about his ghost underworld sect? Situ Chi coughed and said coldly, "When will Chu Xiu come out? Asking us seniors to wait for him, Chu Xiu is really arrogant. Does he really think he's the leader of the devil cult?" Chapter 952. To the current Jianghu, it was a joke to talk about seniors and juniors. Even in a sect, everyone looked at strength and not the so-called seniors and juniors. However, Situ Chi did not think that he was weaker than Chu Xiu. Moreover, so many of them were waiting here. Each of them was older than Chu Xiu by many generations. How could he, Chu Xiu, let these seniors wait for him here? What a scandal! At this moment, Chu Xiu walked in from the inner hall and walked step by step to the main seat. He looked at everyone present and did not say a word. The impatience and even dissatisfaction that they had felt just now had disappeared in an instant. To him, Chu Xiu was a junior, but what this junior had done was something that he could never do in his lifetime. At this moment, Chu Xiu was just looking at them quietly. The oppressive aura wasn't obvious, but it gave them an illusion of nervousness. They were the ones who had come to denounce him. What were they nervous about? Situ Chi snorted and said, "Chu Xiu, don't you want to explain?" Chu Xiu asked indifferently, "Explain what?" "Of course, to explain why you killed Li Jiaodi. Do you know the consequences of killing your fellow disciples? Do you know the consequences? Do you think that you are a member of the Yinma lineage?" Situ Chi's words were righteous. Those who did not know would think that he was a sect leader of a righteous sect and not a sect leader of the Yinma lineage. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "You want an explanation? Well, I will give you an explanation. Why did I kill Li Jiaodi? Because she deserved to die. Do you know what I want to do now? It is a great matter for a country. Among the three countries, Eastern Qi respects the Jianghu sect as the national religion. Although it is vast and can accommodate the Yinma lineage, it is not a place for us to live. Although West Chu does not have a national religion, Dragon Tiger Mountain is in West Chu, and the moon-worshipping cult is also in West Chu. There is no place for my Yin-Mo bloodline to take root. Only the Northern Yan, because of Xiang Long's previous methods, had prevented the Great Light Temple from touching the Northern Yan territory. If my plan succeeds this time, the Northern Yan will be under my control, and my lurking devil clan will naturally be able to develop. In the end, she, Li Jiaodi, threw herself under the command of my sworn enemy, Xiang Chong. By doing this, did she ever think that she was a senior of the Yinma branch? Have you ever thought of helping a junior like me? Jianghu was only so big, and there was nothing special about it. Everyone knew Li Jiaodi's previous whereabouts. For the sake of a gigolo, Li Jiaodi actually went against Chu Xiu. Previously, they were still saying that Li Jiaodi must have water in her brain. What Chu Xiu said made sense, but there was no need to kill people, right? Yu Moya, who had dealt with Chu Xiu a few times before, stood up and said, "Chu, we already understand what happened, but there is no need to kill people, right? After all, we are all from the Yinma branch, so we can talk things over, right?" Chu Xiu said plainly, "Senior Yu's words are right, there is always room for discussion. However, you can ask around and see what the scene was like at that time. That woman, Li Jiaodi, had already gone crazy. I only killed a gigolo of hers, and she actually wanted to fight me to the death. It wasn't that I wanted to kill her, but she insisted on fighting me to the death. Who can she blame if she dies?" This time, even Yu Moya and the others were speechless. If that was the case, then they really shouldn't blame Chu Xiu. Anyway, for a demon master like Yu Moya, who had cultivated for hundreds of years, love and the like were all nonsense. Was it worth it to fight to the death with a fellow sect member for a gigolo? Situ Chi said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you have quibbled so much, but in the end, there is one thing that you can't explain. Are you going to let this matter go just like that? What are the rules of the Yinma branch?" Chu Xiu laughed loudly and said, "Rules? What rules? If you want rules, then I will tell you what my, Chu Xiu's, rules are." Looking coldly at Situ Chi, Chu Xiu said coldly, "If you are willing to help me with my plans, I will treat you all as fellow disciples, and after the matter is done, we will share the benefits. But if someone blocks my way, then I'm sorry, the one who blocks the way will not be a fellow disciple, but a dead person." Chu Xiu waved his hand, and Shang Tianliang, who was wearing a linen robe, walked out from the back hall with his hands behind his back, carrying a small hoe in his hand. He had originally been growing vegetables in the shopping center, but in the end, people from Yin Mo's side suddenly came, so he was suddenly called over by Chu Xiu to act cool. Looking at the people below, Chu Xiu said lightly, "I killed Li Jiaodi. That's what happened, and that's what the situation is. Now, who still wants to explain? Let me, the owner of the shopping center, explain it to everyone." Seeing this, Wuma Ji stood up, cupped his hands, and said, "Goodbye." Yu Moya also cupped his hands, and said, "Sorry to disturb you." After saying that, he turned around and left. Rules were left for people who followed the rules. If someone didn't even want to follow the rules, then what was the point of having rules? Even if Chu Xiu explained the matter of killing fellow disciples to the heavens, it would still be difficult to explain. But now that Chu Xiu had pulled out the experts of the heaven and earth profound opening realm, who would dare to listen to his explanation? Situ Chi and the others were so angry that their faces turned red, but in the end, not a single one of them said anything, and directly turned around and left. This was because they really couldn't be sure if Chu Xiu would really kill them. If they had thought that Chu Xiu would care about their status as elders of the Yinma clan, but now, they could be sure that this status meant nothing to Chu Xiu. He had already killed Li Jiaodi, so he naturally wouldn't mind killing a second one. At the same time, they secretly cursed Yu Moya and the others for being too weak, for being scared away. Otherwise, with so many elders of the Yinma clan threatening him, would Chu Xiu still dare to be so arrogant? After leaving Yanjing City, Situ Chi found that Yu Moya and the others were still waiting there. He couldn't help but snort coldly, and said, "Everyone, what did we say before? Didn't we say that Chu Xiu must give us an explanation for this matter? Otherwise, where are the rules of the Yinma clan? In the end, you left just like that. You're a joke for no reason." Yu Moya's face turned red, and he snorted coldly, "What explanation do you want? That woman Li Jiaodi looked for trouble and was killed. What else can we do? If she didn't get close to Chu Xiu, would Chu Xiu still chase her all over the Jianghu? Moreover, he even brought out a profound enlightenment realm expert. What do you want us to do? Do we really have to shed all pretense of cordiality? Although Chu Xiu doesn't abide by the rules, at least he's still a member of the Yinma clan. Elder Wei has done him a great favor. No matter how arrogant he is, he won't openly betray the Yinma clan. If we don't shed all pretense of cordiality, then we're still on the same side. If we shed all pretense of cordiality, then we'll be laughed at by everyone in the Jianghu. Situ Chi was speechless by Yumoya. In the end, he snorted coldly, "This Chu Xiu acts like a hawk and acts like a wolf. He's simply that kind of lawless person. Now, he dares to ignore the rules of the Yinma clan, but you guys are still worried about this and that, not daring to act out. I'm afraid that in the end, the entire Yinma clan will be destroyed in his hands." After saying that, Situ Chi turned around and left. He came to question them aggressively, but in the end, he was rebuffed. It would be strange if he was in a good mood. At this time, in the Jianghu hall, Shang Tianliang didn't leave. Instead, he held a hoe and asked, "I say, are they from the same sect as you? Since they're from the same sect, why would they tear you down? You've already become like this. Why don't you quickly go your separate ways? You're actually still in the same force at the same time." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "The things here are too complicated. Master Shang, you won't understand. In Green Capital, a person can't survive alone, but in the outside world, a person can also live a very comfortable life. Therefore, for a long time, without a goal, some people can only see their own immediate interests, but not the overall interests." In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was annihilated, the people of the Yinma clan were still united. Everyone was full of energy, waiting for Dugu Weiwei to return to rebuild the Kunlun devil cult. But 500 years have passed, and Dugu Weiwei hasn't returned yet. This group of people's spirit has also dispersed. Each of them has their own thoughts. It would be strange if they could unite. Shang Tianliang nodded and concluded, "To put it bluntly, you guys have nothing better to do. You're living too comfortably, so you're scheming against each other." Chu Xiu was stunned. Although Shang Tianliang's words were not pleasant to hear, it seemed to be true. If the world they were in now also became green, it was likely that no one would be scheming against each other here. Even living was exhausting, so why would they care about face and rules? "Oh right, Shang City Lord, I heard that you've been farming in Merchant City recently. This kind of thing can be handed over to the ordinary old, weak, women, and children. Why are you doing it yourself?" Shang Tianliang said plainly, "In Merchant City, the city lord also has to personally fight. Now that I'm farming, I, the city lord, naturally have to be the vanguard. And in this period of time, I've reread the records left behind by my Shang clan ancestors. I've reread the martial inheritance left behind by my Shang clan ancestors in the olden antiquity era. Heaven and earth mystic opening does not only cultivate one's body, but also this world. In Green Capital, the world was already broken, the world I cultivated was not complete. But here, I started to comprehend this world anew, and comprehended something different." As he spoke, a green light flashed in Shang Tianliang's hand and seeped into the ground. In the next moment, something that looked like a weed actually cracked the tiles on the ground and grew tenaciously. A single spark can start a prairie fire. A weed cannot be burned by a wildfire, as long as there is a trace of vitality, it can grow again. The world is too big, so big that as long as you can comprehend a little bit of it, you can enjoy endless benefits. I'm farming, but what I'm plowing is my own dantian." After saying that, Shang Tianliang continued to walk out with his little hoe. There was no trace of the fierce aura that he had in Merchant City. Instead, he had an otherworldly and elegant aura, as if he was an otherworldly expert. Chu Xiu looked at the cracked tiles and the weeds that were half a person tall, and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The Jianghu Hall's lobby had just been renovated not long ago. Should he pay for it? Or should he pay for it? Chapter 953. In the Great Hall of the Northern Yen Imperial Palace. It was still dark in the Northern Yen, so most of the palaces were gloomy and depressing. But today, the atmosphere in the Northern Yen Imperial Palace was even more depressing, because Xianglong was on the verge of collapsing. Dozens of core members of the Northern Yen Xiang royal family were gathered in the palace. Xianglong lay on the bed, his breathing extremely low. Several imperial physicians were in a flurry, sweating profusely from exhaustion. But they didn't dare to stop, afraid that they would be dragged to the grave with him. Among the Northern Yen royal family present, except for his younger brother who hated Xianglong, the others didn't seem sad. In fact, they were very indifferent. The emperor and the royal family were two different concepts. In Northern Yen, only the direct descendants of Xianglong's bloodline could take over the throne. Even if the people of his bloodline were all trash, they still had to let a trash take over the throne, because they were the direct descendants. As for the other Northern Yen royal families, they might have been direct descendants of the royal family, but since their ancestors were in theft, they were only members of the Xiang royal family. To them, the so-called royal family was more like a noble family. They worked hard for the Xiang royal family and contributed their strength, while the emperor had to use the power of the entire royal family to support them in order to maintain his position. That was the simple relationship between the two sides. So seeing Xianglong die, they didn't feel sad or happy. After all, as long as the next emperor could bring them enough benefits, it was enough. But just because they weren't sad didn't mean that Xiangchong wasn't sad. Xiangchong had never been a cold-blooded person, so when he saw Xianglong and his elder brother fighting for the throne, he was very sad and hated Xianglong. But now, seeing Xianglong on the verge of death, although he still hated Xianglong, he was still sad. After working for half a day, the imperial physicians looked at each other and said to Xiangchong, "Your Highness, we have exhausted all our strength. His Majesty is like a lamp that has run out of oil, and his spirit is starting to dissipate. It's not something that can be cured, even with the 9 revolutions divine pill." "Can Imperial Brother speak again?" Xiangchong asked, suppressing the pain in his heart. One of the imperial physicians nodded and said, "That's possible, but forcibly stimulating His Majesty's spirit will cause His Majesty's spirit to dissipate even faster." Xiangchong hesitated for a moment, but he still nodded and said, "Go, let Imperial Brother leave a few final words." The Grand Physician nodded. He took out a silver needle and pierced several major acupoints on Xianglong's body. Xianglong, who had originally seemed like a dead man, coughed twice. His lifeless gaze turned to Xiangchong. The corners of his mouth curved as he weakly said, "You finally call me Imperial Brother again." Hearing Xianglong's first words, Xiangchong's eyes immediately reddened. "Imperial Brother, what else do you want to say?" Xiangchong grabbed Xianglong's hand and asked. Xianglong weakly shook his head. "It's all been arranged. There's nothing more to say. We have already done our best. Once Chong'er ascends to the throne, we will have to rely on him." At this point, Xianglong suddenly grasped Xiangchong's hand tightly. As if using all his strength, he spat out his last words, "We are not willing. But I don't regret it." As his voice fell, Xianglong's vitality completely dissipated. Xiangchong could no longer hold back his tears. "Imperial Brother." The merits and demerits of Xianglong's life were no longer clear. As an elder brother, he had killed his own brother to seize the throne, showing no mercy to his elder brother who shared the same mother. He could be said to be cold-blooded to the extreme. As a father, because he was busy with the affairs of the empire, even his most beloved son, Xiangchong, had not received much guidance from him. This had also caused his sons to be at odds with each other on the surface and in their hearts, causing the brothers to turn on each other. But as the emperor of the Northern Yen, he was qualified, even outstanding. The Northern Yen had originally been just one of the many small kingdoms in the world. If not for Xianglong, even if Eastern Qi had a useless emperor, the size of Eastern Qi alone would have been enough to sweep through the world, destroying all the small kingdoms and unifying the world. But because of the existence of the Northern Yan, Xianglong was able to unite the Northern Yan pugilistic world, West Chu, and any other forces that could be allied with. In the end, they managed to block the expansion of Eastern Qi, creating a tripartite balance of power in the world. He was unwilling because the current emperors of the world were all mediocre. As long as he was given time, Eastern Qi could not sweep through the world, but he could. Eastern Qi could not unify the world, but he could. He had no regrets because even if he, Xianglong, was despised by millions of people, even if he was treated as an enemy by his own younger brother for the rest of his life, he would still make the same choice if he was given the chance to do it again. Whether it was his merits or demerits, it was up to the later generations to judge. In any case, he, Xianglong, had no regrets in this life. In the 62nd year of the Northern Yan Jianghu, Xianglong passed away. Before Xianglong's death, the Northern Yan experienced a period of peace. But following his death, the entire Northern Yan began to stir. Xianglong did not summon any princes before his death. His posthumous edict had already been written. If nothing went wrong, the next step would be Xiangchong's ascension to the throne. But how could things go so smoothly? In the Crown Prince's palace, Xiangchong was overjoyed despite his sorrow. This day had finally come. Xiangli was in his residence. When he heard the news, he immediately locked himself in a dark room and refused to see anyone. The final moment had finally arrived. If he succeeded, he would reach the peak. If he failed, he would kill himself as soon as possible. Xiangchong would even make sure he died a horrible death. In the Jianghu hall, Chu Xiu was expressionless because he had been planning for this day for a long time. Victory or defeat, success or failure, all depended on this one move. After Xianglong's death, the funeral had to be held first. After the funeral, it would be Xiangchong's ascension ceremony. In the palace, the Northern Yan royalty, the military, and some noble generals had all gathered. As the governor of the Jianghu hall, Chu Xiu naturally stood at the head of the table. Other than the Northern Yan people, Shi Yunzi, Meiko Mori, and Su Yan from the Chunyang Dao sect had also come. However, both parties were still injured and had yet to recover. This time, they had come purely to watch the ceremony. They were still hostile towards each other. The dragon throne was suspended in the air. On the high platform, an old man with white hair and beard walked out slowly with Xianglong's posthumous edict in his hand. He was the oldest member of the Xiang royal family. Although he was not very strong and was nearing the end of his life, he still needed to preside over this kind of occasion. Xiangchong knelt on the ground. As the 13th prince, he was kneeling in front of everyone. The other princes looked at Xiangchong with complicated gazes. Although the 13th prince was special and was the favorite of Xianglong, no one had thought that he would be the one to ascend to the throne in the end. Of course, other than jealousy, they had no other thoughts. Among all of Xianglong's sons, Xiangli had the greatest advantage previously. Even if Xiangli couldn't get the position, it wouldn't be their turn anyway. Therefore, the princes present were only jealous, but not resentful. At this moment, although Xiangchong also lowered his head, there was only one thing in his eyes. It was the dazzling dragon throne at the front, the position that would soon belong to him. Although the dragon throne was not beautiful or luxurious, because it had been used for years, some of the dragon patterns on the throne had even been worn away. However, that position represented power. The power to control the entire Northern Yan Emperor. Previously, all of this was only in his dreams. Now that it had appeared in front of him, how could Xiangchong not be nervous? He was so nervous that he was trembling slightly. The ancestor of the Xiang royal family stood at the front and said in an old but powerful voice, "Xiangchong, His Majesty has passed away. Before he left, he appointed you as the crown prince. I hope you will not disappoint him. Among the 3 countries in the world, Northern Yen doesn't have the right time, the right place, and the right people. But under the leadership of His Majesty, we've managed to protect this land. Now that His Majesty has passed away, the burden will be on your shoulders. Are you confident? Xiangchong hurriedly bowed and said, "Of course I am confident. With Father's will before me, I will definitely inherit Father's will and lead the Northern Yen to sweep across the world and unify the Central Plains." The ancestor of the Xiang royal family nodded and was about to read out Xiang Long's posthumous edict for Xiangchong to officially ascend to the throne. However, at this moment, a voice rang out at an inopportune time, "Your Highness is confident, but I am not." Sweep across the world? I am afraid that within a few years of your ascension, the Northern Yen will be destroyed by you. Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction of the voice. Chu Xiu casually stepped forward without the slightest hesitation, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Mako Mori and Su Yen raised their heads at the same time and looked at each other. Had Chu Xiu gone mad? He openly opposed Xiangchong's ascension and interfered in the affairs of the Northern Yen royal family. He was making an enemy of the entire Northern Yen dynasty. Xiangchong shouted angrily, "Chu Xiu! What are you trying to do? This is the imperial court's coronation ceremony, not a place where you can talk nonsense. Are you trying to rebel?" Chu Xiu said coldly, "Rebel? Your Highness, the Xiang royal family is the Northern Yen royal family and the ruler of Northern Yen, but don't forget that we also live in Northern Yen and are part of Northern Yen. I am not rebelling. When His Majesty was still alive, even if I had some differences with His Majesty, have you ever seen me say no? His Majesty is a great ruler, and we can rest assured that the Northern Yen is in his hands. However, this Crown Prince is not a good ruler. Letting him control Northern Yen will be a disaster. I have no intention of rebelling, and I will not rebel. However, I would like to ask all of you to consider this carefully. Is such a person really suitable to inherit the throne? His Majesty's eyes were failing him before his death, and he could not see through a person's heart. That is why he chose such a person. A good ruler can lead the Northern Yen from a small barbarian kingdom to the point where they are now fighting against Eastern Qi. But what about an unqualified emperor? That is a disaster. Don't forget how Eastern Qi replaced the Jiang family in the past. The emperor's surname can be Xiang, but it does not have to be Xiangchong. Chapter 954. Xiangchong was not surprised by Chu Xiu's sudden appearance. Because Xiang Long had already said that Chu Xiu would not sit still and wait for death. But it did not matter. Chu Xiu alone could not shake the entire Northern Yen imperial court. It would not matter even if he pulled in the Yinma clan. Xiang Long had been guarding against Chu Xiu when he introduced the Daoist and Buddhist sects. But when they heard Chu Xiu mention the matter of Eastern Qi replacing the Jiang clan, all the Northern Yen royalty's expressions changed. This matter could be said to be a taboo among all the royalty. In the past, the fight for the throne was only between the direct descendants. Regarding this matter, neither the Xiang royalty nor the other royalty would stop it. How could there be no bloodshed in the fight for the throne? Only the one who obtained the throne through bloodshed could be considered a true emperor. Of course, there were also cases where there was no bloodshed. But there were only two possibilities. One was that the one who obtained the throne was too strong, causing others to lose the confidence to compete. Another possibility was that the people of this generation were too weak, so weak that they couldn't even fight. Therefore, to the royalty, the fight for the throne was very normal. Previously, when Xiang Long killed his elder brother to obtain the throne, this patriarch of the Xiang royalty, who was preparing to read the edict, did not even participate. He did not even say a word. Only when the situation was set and Xiang Long had killed all the competitors did he come out to preside over Xiang Long's ascension ceremony. He read some messy things and acted as a mascot for a day. No matter how fierce and bloody the fights were, they were fights between people with the same surname. But this time, Eastern Qi's subordinate actually changed the emperor. The Great Eastern Qi directly changed the country's surname. This was something that was very difficult to accept. What did Chu Xiu mean by this? Xiang Chong said coldly, Chu Xiu, do you also want the Northern Yan to be surnamed Chu? Xiang Chong jumped out and yelled, Men! Take down Chu Xiu! Arrest this traitor! At this moment, Xiang Chong hated Chu Xiu to the core. Originally, his side was already prepared to ascend the throne, but this guy actually jumped out to cause trouble. He deserved to die, he really deserved to die. Xiang Chong was now considered the crown prince. His words were of course very effective. A group of experts from the Imperial Consecration Hall came out of nowhere and stared at Chu Xiu and the people from the Jianghu Hall with cold expressions. Chu Xiu said indifferently, What? You won't even give me a chance to say a word? Your Highness, I don't want the entire Northern Yan to bear the surname Chu, nor am I interested in the Xiang family's territory. Today, I just want to tell you that although Xiang Chong was chosen by His Majesty's decision is not completely correct. At the very least, regarding the matter of the successor, he was wrong, gravely wrong. Your Highness has always been in charge of the Imperial family's Hall of Masters, but that won't do. Your Highness, have you forgotten the people Xiang Chong placed in the Hall of Masters? Xiang Chong's biggest weakness is that he can't tolerate others. He can't even trust you, his imperial uncle, so who else can he trust? General Beigong, don't you have any opinions? Hearing this, the expressions of Beigong Bailey and the others changed slightly. If Chu Xiu didn't stand out to say this today, they wouldn't have said much. But the fact that Xiang Chong had interfered with their power was like a thorn in their hearts. Don't use those you doubt, and don't doubt those you use. Xiang Long could already be considered as a suspicious person, but he almost never planted any spies in the military. This was because he knew that the Northern Yan kingdom was won by these people in the military. If he forced them too much, he would be the one to suffer. The only spy was Xiang Wu, but Xiang Wu also sat in this position with his own ability. As for him, the other people in the 5 armies of the state also recognized him. Although there was a saying that a new emperor brings his own ministers, Xiang Chong hadn't even become the emperor yet, but he had already gone too far. When he really ascended the throne, would there still be a way out for them? Beigong Bailey's expression didn't change. As long as you, Chu Xiu, don't rebel, everything is negotiable. Chu Xiu laughed and said, I've already said that I'm not interested in the Xiang family's territory. The Jianghu Hall is also a part of the Northern Yan court. What I want is only the stability of the Northern Yan court. Xiang Chong isn't suitable to be the emperor. There are many people waiting for him. Your Highness Xiang Li, don't you think so? Xiang Li, who had been kneeling among the princes, stood up and tidied his clothes. His expression was calm, and he stood beside Chu Xiu without saying a word. Before the coronation ceremony began, he was full of panic and almost broke down. But when the day came, he suddenly calmed down. Life and death, success and failure, riches and honor were up to the heavens. If he didn't do it, he would die. If he did it, he might as well let go of everything and follow Chu Xiu to the end. At this moment, when everyone saw Xiang Li standing behind Chu Xiu, they were really surprised. Even Xiang Chong didn't expect this. The relationship between these two was too secretive. It should be said that they had not contacted each other many times. So in the eyes of others, these two were not compatible at all. How did they get together? Moreover, they had heard that Chu Xiu seemed to have a grudge against Xiang Li. Why did he want to help Xiang Li ascend the throne now? Chu Xiu didn't care about the thoughts of the people present. He just pointed at Xiang Li and said, I believe everyone is very familiar with the second prince, so I won't say much. Previously, you didn't feel that the second prince is good. Now, compared to Xiang Chong, who is more suitable to be the emperor? The military martialists and nobles looked at each other with different expressions. Of course, they were very familiar with Xiang Li. Previously, they had all thought that Xiang Li would succeed the throne. So even if they didn't swear loyalty to him, they were very close to him. In all fairness, whether it was scheming, or ability, Xiang Li was worlds apart from Xiang Long. As the emperor of Northern Yan, his ability was not considered outstanding. It could only be said that he was not too stupid. Therefore, the people did not have any feelings for him. It was only because he was the one who had the most hope of inheriting the throne that everyone sided with him. However, compared to Xiang Chong, the people could feel Xiang Li's strong points. Xiang Li's strong point was that although he wasn't outstanding, he didn't think too much of himself. He had always regarded himself as the heir of the Northern Yan. Therefore, every move he made was in accordance with his identity as the crown prince of the Northern Yan. Although he wasn't outstanding, he didn't make too many mistakes. Xiang Chong was a typical negative example. The more he did, the more mistakes he made. After a moment of silence, Beigong Bailey said, "I won't participate in the royal family's disputes. The Eastern Mountain Army will forever be loyal to the Northern Yan and His Majesty." Chu Xiu couldn't help but praise Beigong Bailey for being smart. Mad Butcher Beigong Bailey was very famous in the three countries. He was an absolute god of war. However, he wasn't a brute. On the contrary, he was very smart. As long as the Xiang family was vying for the throne, it was an internal dispute. Who cared who was behind them? He wouldn't participate. In any case, as long as the person who eventually ascended the throne was still surnamed Xiang, the Eastern Mountain Army would be loyal to the Northern Yan court. He was loyal to the Northern Yan Emperor. As for who the Northern Yan Emperor was, it didn't matter. Xiang Chong's heart sank when he heard Beigong Bailey's words. What made Xiang Chong's heart even colder was that the other generals of the five armies also expressed that they had the same attitude as Beigong Bailey. Xiang Chong couldn't help but look at Xiang Wu. This man was a member of the Xiang family. He was different from the other outsiders. But Xiang Wu only chuckled. "I knew it. Every time we choose an emperor, there'll be a commotion like this. I'm used to it. Everyone, fight to your heart's content. Whoever wins will be the emperor. We're all waiting to see the result." Earlier in the restaurant, Xiang Wu had already complained to Chu Xiu about Xiang Chong. Although that person was also surnamed Xiang, it was a pity that he had never seen himself as a member of the Xiang dynasty. Xiang Wu did not have much ambition, but he had been in Jianghu since he was young. He was like a wild dog that protected its food. If someone dared to touch the banana on his plate, even if that person's surname was Xiang, he would still dare to bite that person. Seeing that the five armies and the nobles were all silent, Xiang Chong couldn't help but curse in his heart. These people were really unreliable. Luckily, he was prepared. "Daoist Wuyang!" Xiang Chong roared. Daoist Wuyang walked over unhurriedly from the back. With his strength and status, he naturally couldn't be at the front of the line. He could only wait at the back. "Your Highness, what business do you have?" Daoist Wuyang held his hands up and looked at Xiang Chong with a hint of mockery in his eyes. At this moment, Xiang Chong did not even notice that something was wrong with Daoist Wuyang. He immediately said, "Order all the subordinates of the Crown Prince Palace to act. Take my token and mobilize the five armies of the kingdom to kill the rebels." He had previously planted many people into the five armies. Now, they could finally be put to use. Hearing this, the expressions of Beigong Bailey and the others became even uglier. They were confident that the five armies had been controlled like an iron bucket by him. No one else could mobilize them. But Xiang Chong's attitude of disregarding them still made these generals very dissatisfied and angry. Daoist Wuyang only smiled coldly after hearing Xiang Chong's words. He didn't move. Xianchong frowned and said, "What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?" Chu Xiu stepped forward and said calmly, "Of course he's waiting for my order." A smile appeared on Daoist Wuyang's face. He walked to Chu Xiu's side and cupped his fists at him and Xiangli, official Chu, second prince. Seeing this, Xiangchong felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His face instantly turned pale. Chapter 955. Xiangchong did not expect Daoist Wuyang's betrayal at all. He simply stood there in a daze, his expression fluctuating between clear and dark, filled with hatred. He had thought that he treated Daoist Wuyang as a trusted aide. But now, Daoist Wuyang had betrayed him. The others present were also unable to react. Just how did Daoist Wuyang end up with Chu Xiu? People like Beigong Bailey were no strangers to Daoist Wuyang. He had been in northern Yen for decades. When Chu Xiu first came to northern Yen, he had fought a fierce battle over the ownership of the subduing martial hall. Daoist Wuyang had suffered a great loss. How did the two of them end up together? Xiangchong seemed to think of something. He glared at Daoist Wuyang and said, "That means the people you found are all traitors." Daoist Wuyang said indifferently, "Traitor is not the right word to use. They have never been loyal to you, so how can they betray you?" Xiangchong clenched his teeth and suddenly said to Beigong Bailey and the others, "Great General Beigong, I was rash before. What I did was all because Daoist Wuyang bewitched me. All of you have seen it now. The people I placed with you are not my trusted aides, but traitors sent by Chu Xiu." Hearing those words, everyone on scene shook their heads. Even the people from the Xiang dynasty furrowed their brows. Xiangchong was already panicking. In his panic, he dared to say anything. Although Chu Xiu had openly stood up for Xiangli to seize the throne, he was still the crown prince of northern Yen. In the end, the crown prince of a country was apologizing to his own official. How vexing. Although even Xiang Long had to be courteous to someone as powerful as Beigong Bailey in the past, as the emperor, Xiang Long would only exchange benefits with Beigong Bailey. He wouldn't plead with his subjects. At that moment, Xiangchong's panicked appearance was indeed a bit shameful for the Xiang dynasty. Moreover, Xiangchong also said that the people he planted were all spies sent by Chu Xiu and had nothing to do with him. This was even more ridiculous. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that even if this matter was instigated by Daoist Wuyang, even if the traitors were Chu Xiu's men, Xiangchong had not discovered it and even treated them as his trusted aides. What was this? This was a bad judgment of people. Moreover, at that time, you didn't even know that they were traitors. In the end, you were bewitched by them, and you directly agreed to plant people there. Aren't you still trying to seize power? Does that mean that if these people are really your henchmen, it's reasonable for you to arrange for them to seize power? It would have been better if Xiangchong hadn't said this. Now that he'd said it, Beigong Bailey and the others had an even lower impression of him. Chu Xiu turned to Xiangli and said, "Your Highness, it's your turn. Speak." Xiangli nodded and took a deep breath. He walked out and said, "Imperial Uncle, I've always thought this position was mine. Now that Imperial Father has given it to Xiangchong, I can't accept it and I can't accept it. Now you've seen what kind of person Xiangchong is. Imperial Father is wise and mighty, but he's not a god after all. There are times when he makes mistakes." Xiangchong snorted coldly and said, "You mean to say that it's right for you to be the emperor? Xiang Long, you colluded with Chu Xiu to help you seize the throne. Who knows how many northern Yen interests you've betrayed? Do you think I'm an idiot?" Xiangli shook his head and said, "Imperial Uncle, I've never betrayed the northern Yen interests. I've only cooperated with official Chu. I've said it before. What Imperial Father has done is not necessarily right. Especially in the end, he still used the same method he used decades ago to check and balance each other. It's useless now. Everyone knows official Chu's strength and the forces behind him. Instead of forcing official Chu to rebel, why not cooperate with him? The country belongs to the Xiang family, the Jianghu belongs to official Chu. When the time comes, official Chu will lead the northern Yan Jianghu. Even if eastern Qi invades again, the northern Yan Jianghu will stand a chance. Aren't you afraid that Chu Xiu won't keep his promise? Xiang Li nodded and said, of course I am. But there's nothing in this world that's guaranteed. In the past, when Imperial Father decided to cooperate with the northern Yan Jianghu, there were also many who opposed it. How do you know it won't work if you don't try? Imperial Uncle, old ancestor, both of you are the pillars of the Xiang dynasty. If I do something wrong, you can depose me at any time as you wield the 9-dragon seal. Could it be that you are still worried about this? Xiang Li's words were very sincere. He even mentioned the matter of deposing an emperor. The northern Yan emperor can be deposed, and it's very simple. The 9-dragon seal is one of the trump cards of the northern Yan Jianghu. When the emperor is combined with the 9-dragon seal, he can bestow the power of the dragon vein to the 9-dragon seal. But as an emperor, even if he had some foundation in martial arts before he ascended to the throne, it was all wasted after he ascended to the throne. He has no ability to control the 9-dragon seal. Therefore, the 9-dragon seal has always been controlled by the experts of the Xiang royal family. Once the current emperor is found to be muddle-headed and there's a risk of weakening the dynasty, the Xiang royal family can vote on whether or not to depose the emperor. The result of this is that the 9-dragon seal will temporarily lose its effect. Only after the new emperor ascends to the throne can the 9-dragon seal be used again. Moreover, the new emperor must be a direct descendant of the Xiang royal family. This rule was set by the founding ancestors of the northern Yan dynasty. It has been like this since the day the 9-dragon seal was created. It was to prevent the muddle-headed descendants from bringing the northern Yan dynasty into decline. This matter has always been a thorn in the heart of the northern Yan emperors. Usually, they don't even dare to mention it. Of course, the Xiang royal family doesn't dare to use this power recklessly. They are all members of the royal family. If one falls, all falls. It's not worth it to depose the emperor for no reason and cause the 9-dragon seal to lose its effect temporarily. Xiang Li has reached a dead end. If he can't become the emperor, he will die. For this reason, he has already sold the Jianghu of the northern Yan to Chu Xiu. Now, it's not a problem for him to hand over his life and future to the Xiang royal family. Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Chong and said, Your Highness, Xiang Chong even dares to plant his men in the Imperial High Worship Hall and fight for power. You can imagine what he is thinking. This is a classic example of internal strife and external strife. As an emperor, his vision was not limited to this small territory, but the entire world. Is it really worth it to choose such a person as the heir of the northern Yan dynasty? The posthumous edict is in your hands. One word and the northern Yan throne can be changed. At this moment, everyone is looking at Xiang Chong. Chu Xiu is right. The key to the northern Yan throne lies in Xiang Chong. Chu Xiu's underhanded tricks have caused Xiang Chong to completely offend the military and northern Yan nobles. Xiang Chong's performance just now has disappointed everyone. As an emperor, you can be mediocre, even if you are mediocre to the level of Eastern Qi Lu Hao Chang. In a dynasty, most people are not mediocre. In any aspect, as long as you are willing to delegate power, anything can be solved. But Xiang Chong's problem is that although he is not too mediocre, he is too scheming. His flaws are also very obvious. Such a person as an emperor can easily ruin everything. At present, the only force that has the strength to fight against Chu Xiu and his men is the Imperial High Worship Hall. It is the most elite force of the northern Yan royal family. Apart from the Imperial High Worship Hall, a number of experts in the northern Yan Inner Palace are now under Xiang Chong's control. Even the 9-dragon seal is in his hands. Before Xiang Long died, the only right thing he did was to hand over all his power to Xiangchong. Although Xiangchong has always hated his brother, among all the northern Yan royals, only Xiangchong can be trusted. Under everyone's gaze, Xiangchong immediately felt a great deal of pressure. Xiangchong looked at him nervously, while Chu Xiu also looked at him intently. In fact, no matter what Xiangchong chooses, he will not be at a disadvantage. With the Northern Yan Imperial High Worship Hall in hand and the power Xiang Long has given him, he can even be said to be the most powerful person in the Northern Yan royal family. The ancestor of the Xiang family is only senior and can be used as a mascot. In terms of power, he cannot compare to Xiangchong. Therefore, no matter who inherits the throne, Xiangchong can sit back and relax. Deep down, Xiangchong is indeed dissatisfied with Xiangchong. What Xiangchong has done has touched his bottom line. But when he thought of Xiang Long's face before his death and his instructions, Xiangchong could not bring himself to say this. After a long while, Xiangchong sighed. Xiangli, Chu Xiu, stop. There has been enough bloodshed in the fight for the throne. My brother's generation has been miserable enough. I don't want to see the next generation continue like this. Xiangli, I know what you are worried about. You are worried that Xiangchong will harm you after he ascends the throne. You can rest assured about this, I can guarantee that Xiangchong will absolutely not touch a single hair on your head. And Chu Xiu, I know what Jianghu Hall has done for the Northern Yan. My brother is too suspicious. He can't let go of his power tactics even before his death, so he has tried his best to suppress Jianghu Hall. As long as you, Chu Xiu, can guarantee that Jianghu Hall will not betray the Northern Yan, then all the means that my brother has set to suppress Jianghu Hall will be invalid. Even if Xiangchong ascends the throne, I will guarantee the interests of Jianghu Hall. Hearing Xiangchong say this, Chu Xiu shook his head. Before the coronation hall, Chu Xiu had already made countless deductions about everyone's position, how they would choose, and how he should deal with it. It could be said that so far, everything was similar to what Chu Xiu had expected. The only thing that he had missed was Xiangchong's choice. Because in Chu Xiu's view, Xiangchong was sentimental and was a different kind of person from Xiang Long. He might not agree with Xiang Long's plan. Moreover, Xiangchong had indeed placed people in the Imperial Consecrator Hall. Even when Xiangchong personally came to reprimand him, Xiangchong did not take it seriously. It could be said that he had offended Xiangchong badly. But Chu Xiu did not expect that Xiangchong was too sentimental. Even at this point, he still chose to protect the successor that Xiang Long had appointed. Chapter 956. Xiangchong's choice was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's expectations, but Chu Xiu was not surprised at all. In his calculations, there were various possibilities. Xiangchong chose to continue carrying out Xiang Long's posthumous edict and make Xiangchong the crown prince. Chu Xiu had also calculated this. As for the solution, it was very simple. Fight with strength. How could there be no bloodshed and no deaths in the fight for the throne? Chu Xiu looked at Xiangchong and shook his head slightly. Your Highness, sometimes you are too naive. Do you think you can protect Xiangli? When Xiangchong ascends to the throne, you don't know what he will look like and how much power he will have. Killing is always simpler than protecting a person. As for the promise you made to Jianghu Hall, I don't believe it either. The hatred between Xiangchong and me has already been formed. If you were the emperor, would you be willing to watch a guy who has a grudge against you wander around under your nose all day long? Anyway, I don't want to. Xiangchong said in a deep voice, Chu Xiu, are you really determined to intervene in the Northern Yan royal family struggle? And Xiangli, you don't believe me, your imperial uncle. Are you going to believe an outsider? Chu Xiu shook his head. I am not intervening in the royal family's struggle. I just want to protect myself. I have put in a lot of effort in Jianghu Hall. I don't want to waste all this effort. Xiang Li looked at Xiang Chong and then at Chu Xiu. He gritted his teeth and chose to continue standing behind Chu Xiu. In fact, he only wanted to save his life. If Xiang Chong had said that he could save his life, he would not have cooperated with Chu Xiu. But at this moment, it was already too late. Both sides had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. Moreover, he could be considered to have witnessed the true hypocrisy of the world. Even this imperial uncle who claimed to be able to protect him was, in fact, unreliable. He and the others had already revealed their true intentions and had the strength to threaten Xiang Chong's position. Only then did Xiang Chong say that he could protect him. Why didn't he say this before? At the end of the day, everything depended on strength. But now, his subordinates had either left or dispersed, and they did not have much strength left. His only reliance was Chu Xiu. If he did not follow Chu Xiu closely, who else could he follow? When he saw this scene, Xiang Chong took a deep breath and said, "Fine, fine, fine. Since it's like this, then don't blame me. It is not so easy to intervene in the battle of the Northern Yan royal family. Chu Xiu, after this battle, your Jianghu Hall will have no place in Northern Yan. And Xiang Li, you should know what the loser of the battle of the imperial family is like. At that time, even if I wanted to protect you, I wouldn't be able to. Now." As Xiang Chong's voice fell, hundreds of experts from the Imperial Consecrator Hall surrounded the entire hall. Eunuch Han, General Zhang. As Xiang Chong's voice fell, Eunuch Han nodded directly. With a wave of his hand, more than a dozen old eunuchs exuding a cold aura walked out. Each of them was above the real pellet state. These eunuchs did not belong to the Imperial Consecrator Hall, nor did they belong to the Northern Yan royal family. They were all Xiang Long's own forces, and now they were handed over to Xiang Chong. At this time, another team of elite soldiers in golden armor came, and their momentum was not weak. They were all the Imperial guards who guarded the Imperial city, and they also listened directly to Xiang Long's orders. Of course, they were now handed over to Xiang Chong. In the entire Imperial city, the forces left by Xiang Long had been mobilized. Not to mention that only Chu Xiu jumped out at the moment. Even if everyone jumped out to oppose Xiang Chong's succession, he was confident that he could stop them all. Beigong Bailey and others all retreated to the side. They didn't think about getting involved in this matter. Anyway, in the end, whoever sat on the dragon throne, they would just call him His Majesty. But at this time, some people found that they retreated, but some people didn't. These people were strong and weak, but no matter how strong they were all the backbone figures of the major forces. Otherwise, they wouldn't be qualified to participate in the coronation ceremony. Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Chong and sneered, Your Highness, His Majesty left you so much power to stabilize the Northern Yan imperial court, not to let you fight among yourselves." Xiang Chong snorted coldly and didn't speak, but the 9-dragon seal was already in his hand. The Imperial Consecrator Hall, and the Imperial Guards had already rushed toward the Jianghu Hall people under Chu Xiu. In a place like the coronation ceremony, Chu Xiu naturally couldn't bring all the Jianghu Hall people. There were only a dozen people who were qualified to participate in the coronation ceremony. They were either the upper echelons of the Jianghu Hall or the backbone figures, like the fire slaves. With so many people, it was enough to deal with Chu Xiu. Now Xiang Li's only reliance was Chu Xiu. As long as Chu Xiu and Jianghu Hall were dealt with, the battle for the throne would come to an end. At this moment, Chu Xiu also said faintly, "Do it." As Chu Xiu's voice fell, the martial artists who didn't retreat among the forces before rushed toward the people of the Imperial Consecrator Hall. There were also the merchant city martial artists that Chu Xiu had placed in the major forces. Although the strength of those people in the merchant city was weaker than the martial artists of the same rank, their realm was still there. 2 real fire spirit refinement state, 6 real pellet state. Even if it was a weakened version, their power was still amazing. This time, not only did Xiang Chong's expression change, but even the other people present did not know when Chu Xiu had shoved all these people over to them. In fact, Chu Xiu took a long time to make this move. It had started from the first conflict with Xiang Long. Although Chu Xiu knew the heaven's sun gazing at air technique, he didn't know divination. He didn't expect Xiang Long to die so quickly. At that time, Chu Xiu was just preparing for a rainy day. Although this day might not come, it would definitely come. Therefore, Chu Xiu used his relationship with Xiang Li to place these Immortal lineage martial artists, to be precise, Wei Shiya's lineage, into various forces of the Northern Yan imperial court. At that time, Xiang Li was still a prince, and there were many people around him. Moreover, he didn't place these people to seize power. They all started from the bottom, so they didn't attract attention at all. It wasn't until this time that they were finally exposed. Wolf's ambition. Xiang Chong shouted angrily, and the 9-dragon seal in his hand rotated. In an instant, the aura of heaven and earth in the entire hall was devoured. Even a black dragon was condensed in the sky above the imperial city, and it swept toward Chu Xiu with its tail. The strike of the black dragon's tail was simply the ultimate speed, and it even had the power to tear the space. Just as Chu Xiu wanted to make a move, the tail had already appeared in front of him. The internal strength, real fire, and Buddha's light bloomed at the same time, but the next moment, Chu Xiu was directly knocked out of the palace by this blow. With Chu Xiu's current physical cultivation, he wasn't injured even though he blocked it in a hurry. It was just that his internal organs were shaken, and his blood flow wasn't smooth. But at this time, he was shocked by the power of the 9-dragon seal. The power of heaven and earth was extremely pure, and it was simply unstoppable. The collision even gave Chu Xiu the illusion that he was fighting against heaven and earth. No wonder this thing was known as one of the Northern Yan's trump cards. Now, just by looking at its power, Chu Xiu was convinced that it definitely had the power to fight against an ethereal enlightenment realm cultivator. More importantly, the 9-dragon seal controlled the power of the Northern Yan dragon vein. This was Yanjing City, and although Chu Xiu didn't know where the dragon vein was, he was sure that it was in Yanjing City. Here, the 9-dragon seal could exert the strongest power. Just then, a powerful aura suddenly descended outside the imperial city. Shang Tianliang walked through the air. Every step he took seemed to be stepping on solid ground, causing ripples to form on the ground. Compared to the time when he fought Rama, the aura on Shang Tianliang's body was now completely different. His whole person seemed to be integrated into this world, and he looked very harmonious and natural. The ethereal enlightenment realm was indeed worthy of being called the ethereal enlightenment realm. Those who could cultivate to this realm, regardless of their strength, had a strong understanding of heaven and earth to an abnormal degree. Not long after, Shang Tianliang had begun to adapt to the rules of this world, and even began to reshape his own martial arts. Last time in the Jianghu Hall, Shang Tianliang demonstrated a secret method of condensing vitality. Although it broke Chu Xiu's floor tiles, it was indeed an amazing move. Counting the countless martial art practitioners in the Jianghu, their powers were all inclined towards destruction. Even the power of the Great Light Temple's cultivation method was the same. It was possible to get them to purify the evil power, but to get them to save people, it was extremely difficult. Shang Tianliang, on the other hand, was gathering the vitality of the world, allowing the seeds that had been buried underground for an unknown period of time to sprout once more. This control over the power of vitality represented his current comprehension of the world. Chu Xiu said faintly, "The power of the 9-dragon seal is indeed extraordinary, but now, Your Highness, your opponent is not me." Chu Xiu turned to Shang Tianliang and said, "City Lord Shang, do you have the confidence to block the 9-dragon seal?" Shang Tianliang said angrily, "No." Since he came out of the mountain, although he had an agreement with Chu Xiu really made the most of his remaining value. Every time Shang Tianliang fought, the opponents that Chu Xiu found for him were very difficult. The last time was Luo Mo, and Shang Tianliang was almost crushed all the way. The last time was the Forgetting Sword Hut and the Storm Sword Tomb. Before his injuries had recovered, he was pulled out by Chu Xiu to be a fighter. And this time, he had to face the 9-dragon seal directly in Yanjing City, or even in a place like the Imperial City, which was even more troublesome. Moreover, this thing had almost never been used over the years. Even in the most critical moment of the Northern Yan, no one had attacked the Imperial City. No one knew where the true peak power of the 9-dragon seal was. Seeing that Chu Xiu had found such an opponent for him, it would be strange if Shang Tianliang had a good expression. Chapter 957. Although Shang Tianliang said that he was not confident, Chu Xiu had faith in him. Shang Tianliang was now a genuine Elysium of the heaven and earth realm, while Xiang Chong only relied on external objects to wield the 9-dragon seal. If external objects were used well, their power would indeed be astonishing, but no matter what, they could not compare to ordinary Elysium of the heaven and earth realm experts. How strong was the human king sword of Sword King City in the past? In the end, it was still sent flying by a slap from Yi Shaonan. And now, although Shang Tianliang said that he was not confident, he did not hesitate in his attacks at all. Previously, Shang Tianliang's martial arts leaned towards close combat, explosive and fierce. It was not because he was born with this kind of martial arts, but because in an environment like the Green Capital, he did not know anything else besides this kind of martial arts. But now, Shang Tianliang had found the martial arts that his ancestor had in the past, and he had also added his own understanding to it, so its power was 30% stronger. The black dragon within the 9-dragon seal roared, and as Xiang Chong's seal fell, a black dragon directly condensed in the sky. Surrounding it was a storm of origin energy, and it directly charged towards Shang Tianliang. Standing in mid-air, Shang Tianliang formed a seal with his hands. In an instant, dark clouds filled the sky, and heavy rain poured down. These were real raindrops, caused by Shang Tianliang's own understanding of the weather. But when the raindrops fell, they were not in the shape of raindrops, but in the shape of thin needles, surrounded by thick sword qi. The sword rain attacked, and the storm of origin energy around the black dragon was instantly torn apart. The next moment, Shang Tianliang waved his hand, and countless sword rain condensed in his hand, turning into a 300-meter-long sword. As he waved it, the sword slashed at the black dragon. A sorrowful dragon roar sounded, and the violent origin energy of the heaven and earth scattered in all directions. Some of the people present had never seen an ultimate expert of the Elysium of the heaven and earth fight in their lives. Now that they saw the fierce battle between the two, they even forgot to exclaim. Existences of the Elysium of the heaven and earth were really like immortals of the earth. With a wave of their hands, they could control heaven and earth, move mountains and overturn seas. If the two had not deliberately restrained their power, and let the scattered origin energy of the heaven and earth overflow in mid-air, the entire imperial city would have been destroyed. As the two of them fought fiercely, some members of the Xiang clan's royal family surrounded the old ancestor of the Xiang clan. They didn't know what to do. Xiang Chong was the crown prince, but Xiang Li was also a direct descendant of Xiang Long. They were fighting for the throne. Who should he help? Or rather, whose side should they stand on? That old ancestor of the Xiang family said in a deep voice, "What's the rush? No matter how strong Chu Xiu is, he is just an outsider. He can only help a member of the Xiang family ascend the throne. If he really wanted to usurp the throne, do you think Beigong Bailey and the others would turn a blind eye?" It was the same for Xiang Chong. His Majesty had only left behind a posthumous edict. It would be best if someone listened to it. If no one listened to it and you couldn't suppress others, you shouldn't blame others for losing the throne. Don't panic. Just sit here and watch the show. What we're protecting is the root of the Xiang dynasty. Let them fight for their face. The one who wins is the supremacy of the 9-5. This ancestor of the Xiang clan had lived for a long time, so much so that no one knew exactly how old he was. He had already seen the succession of emperors for several generations. In fact, the previous generation Xiang Long and the others had fought even more intensely. The eyes of the old ancestor of the Xiang clan couldn't help but reveal a trace of reminiscence. He still remembered that when Xiang Long ascended the throne, everyone thought that his elder brother would ascend the throne. As the younger brother, he was deeply trusted by his elder brother. He would definitely be like Xiang Chong and be conferred the title of king. Then, he would hold a portion of the power of the northern Yan in a glorious manner. In the end, who would have thought that at the moment of the ascension ceremony, Xiang Long would reveal his fangs? He had actually secretly contacted almost half of the northern Yan forces. After a massacre, he immediately turned the tables. No one expected that Xiang Long, who had always been well-behaved and even helped his elder brother strategize, would actually come to usurp the throne. Even the old ancestor of the Xiang clan didn't expect this. That battle was much more tragic than this one. Blood flowed like a river. Now, it was just a small matter. Although it was a small matter to the old ancestor of the Xiang clan, at that moment, the people from the martial hall under Chu Xiu had already fought with the people from the Hall of Masters and the Imperial Palace. A sharp light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He was also prepared to attack. His target wasn't Xiang Chong. He was prepared to help Shang Tianliang take down Xiang Chong first. Killing Xiang Chong was meaningless. Instead, it would anger the entire Xiang clan. Xiang Chong himself was only for show. Xiang Chong, who supported him with the posthumous edict, was the key. As long as Xiang Chong lost, Xiang Li would naturally find a way to deal with him after he ascended the throne. At that time, whether he wanted to kill or torture him would depend on his mood. However, at that moment, Xiang Chong suddenly shouted, "Kong Dongming. It's your turn to attack." As Xiang Chong's voice fell, the sword saint of the Eastern Sea, Kong Dongming, appeared out of nowhere. He looked at Xiang Chong with a stupefied expression. He extended a hand and said, "Only once." Xiang Chong shouted, "I know it's only once. Stop Chu Xiu." "No. Kill him." Kong Dongming was an extremely eccentric person. When he was a guest at the Jiangshan pavilion, he often worked for money and disappeared after he earned it. Originally, with Kong Dongming's personality, he would never come to the Northern Yan to be Xiang Chong's teacher. The reason why he appeared here was that Xiang Chong had found a way to lure him into the Northern Yan. The price he had to pay was a sword mark left behind by the sword saint, Gu Qingcheng, after her battle with Dugu Weiwei. Back then, Gu Qingcheng transformed herself into a sword spirit and fought with Dugu Weiwei. Although she managed to injure Dugu Weiwei, her body and soul were both destroyed. However, at a cliff far away from where the two of them fought, because the power of that sword had almost dissipated, the sword had successfully left behind a sword mark. It was obtained by someone else, and no one knew how it had fallen into Bai Yan's hands. Although it was only a sword mark, it was still a sword mark left behind by the sword saint, Gu Qingcheng. For any swordsman, it was a priceless treasure. When Xiang Long learned of Kong Dongming's strength, he made a deal with him. However, Kong Dongming only agreed to help Xiang Long once. Gu Qingcheng's sword mark was only worth him using his full strength once. However, Xiang Long also played a trick in the end. Although he agreed, the condition was that Kong Dongming had to stay by Xiang Chong's side for a year. This opportunity to make a move could be used at will within this year. As long as this opportunity was used up or the year was up, Kong Dongming could leave. She didn't know whether Kong Dongming, the honest man, could see through the scheme. Anyway, he agreed to it. Now that Xiang Chong wanted to use this chance, Kong Dongming was more than happy to do so. To him, constantly training his swordsmanship and challenging the strong swordsman was what he should be doing. Following Xiang Chong was a waste of time. Looking at Chu Xiu, Kang Dongming did not have any killing intent, let alone hostility. In his entire life, only swordsmanship could make his mind fluctuate. He had never had enemies, and he had never treated others as his enemies. He only had those who blocked his way and caused him trouble. When Kang Dongming killed them, he did not have any killing intent. To him, killing was just a way to get rid of trash and obstacles. At this moment, Chu Xiu was not trash or an obstacle in his eyes. He was just a target to complete his mission. Once he was done with him, he could leave this boring place. Therefore, Kang Dongming did not say anything at all. He could not even be bothered to say a word. The sword hidden in the sharkskin scabbard in his hand was finally unsheathed. In an instant, the sword light traversed hundreds of miles, its sharpness piercing the clouds. It was an extremely ordinary sword, 3 feet and 3 inches long. It looked no different from a standard Wuxia iron sword. However, the sharpness of the sword was so piercing that it made one's eyes hurt, and one's mind trembled. When the sword fell, there was no strange phenomenon, nor was there any sword chi rippling out. But in the next moment, alarm bells went off in Chu Xiu's mind. Cultivating the heavens, sun gazing at air, his perception was not the strongest among warriors of the same level, but it was among the best. He did not feel the slightest bit of power, but according to his calculations, a strong sense of danger was already attacking him from all directions. In an instant, the sun, moon, and stars revolved in Chu Xiu's eyes. He pushed his mental strength to the limit, and used the heavens, sun gazing at air with all his might. In the next moment, Chu Xiu's figure suddenly retreated frantically to the left. But at the same time, the air around him let out a trembling sound that sounded like the cry of a sword. It seemed to resound in everyone's hearts. At the spot where Chu Xiu had just appeared, a sword chi seemed to appear out of thin air. It condensed in the void and slashed the ground, creating a sword mark that was hundreds of feet long. Almost in an instant, the damaged imperial city immediately activated the formation. But in the next moment, the formation exploded with bursts of light and was completely extinguished. The aftermath of Kang Dongming's sword had actually activated the formation and completely destroyed it at the same time. Chu Xiu looked at Kang Dongming in shock, while the others looked like they had seen a ghost. What kind of power was this? Was this Kang Dongming at the true fire spirit refinement realm or the heaven and earth elucidation realm? Chu Xiu took a deep breath. There was one thing he really did not expect, and that was Kang Dongming. He had very little information about the sword saint of the East Sea, including that of the wind-sweeping tower. After all, the wind-sweeping tower's influence in the outer endless sea was not strong. Although he had predicted that Kang Dongming would make a move, he did not expect Kang Dongming's strength to be so strong. He now knew how Sword King City, the Forgetful Sword Hut, and the Windcloud Sword Mound had lost. This guy was simply a monster. Others pursued martial arts while Kang Dongming pursued the ultimate swordsmanship. He was even willing to sacrifice martial arts for the sake of swordsmanship. His current strength was infinitely close to the heaven and earth elucidation realm. He was not suppressing his strength, but he did not try to comprehend and communicate with heaven and earth at all, devoting himself to swordsmanship. For the sake of swordsmanship, Kang Dongming did not even have the time to break through to the heaven and earth elucidation realm. If he was not a monster, then what was? Chapter 958. People like Kang Dongming would not survive if they did not go crazy. To be honest, Chu Xiu was shocked by Kang Dongming. This was the first time he had seen someone who clearly had the chance to step into the Elysium opening realm but was too lazy to take that last step. He finally understood why Heavenly King Shen, with his bad temper, did not go after Kang Dongming after losing. First, it was because they had competed fairly. It would be too degrading to go after the other after losing. Second, it was because they did not want to provoke a madman like Kang Dongming. But this time, Chu Xiu was the unlucky one. Kang Dongming's swordsmanship could be said to be the strongest swordsman he had ever met. Even Chu Xiu did not know how his opponent had used that sword. He could only rely on the heaven's sun gazing at air spell to barely predict the danger and then instinctively dodge. And now, when Kang Dongming saw that his sword did not do anything to Chu Xiu, he straightened his face and slashed out 3 times in a row. In an instant, Chu Xiu felt waves of murderous intent coming from all over his body. With just 3 attacks, Kang Dongming had completely sealed off all the places around Chu Xiu that could be dodged. Even the heaven's sun gazing at air spell could not predict a way out. Forming hand seals, Chu Xiu's demonic, half-Buddhist Dharma idol instantly appeared behind him. Vairocana and Mahakala were 2 gods in one body. Resplendent Buddhist flames fused with the apocalyptic fire, forming an extremely demonic color. Kang Dongming's 3 swords appeared in the void. The sword aura did not contain any special power. It was just the purest form of sword intent, but it directly tore through Chu Xiu's Buddha and demon form. The heavenly Dao war case was already in Chu Xiu's hand. It turned into a peerless heavenly saber and swept out. In an instant, endless heaven-earth yuan qi burst out like a vast ocean. The sea-cleaving slash of the 7 limits was unleashed and the violent blade aura collided with the sword aura. Chu Xiu's figure was forced to retreat and he was almost unable to withstand the powerful sword aura. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. Instead of retreating, he moved forward and slashed down with his saber. In an instant, the space seemed to be frozen and all the forces were imprisoned in mid-air. As Chu Xiu's saber fell, everything was cut off. The ethereal slash was the pinnacle of Chu Xiu's mastery of the saber Dao. This move was not easy to receive, nor was it easy to break. However, Kang Dongming gently stabbed out with his sword. His entire body seemed to be imprisoned in this space, like a scroll that was about to be torn apart. However, he did not choose to tear the scroll apart. Instead, he stabbed out with his sword from the scroll. In an instant, the world changed color. Everything in front of Chu Xiu had turned into a shocking sword. Chu Xiu's ethereal slash could imprison the world into a scroll. However, Kang Dongming's sword was even stronger. Everything in front of him had turned into a sword for him to use. A slight cracking sound was heard. In the center of the exchange between the two, the void cracked like a mirror. The heaven-earth yuan qi condensed into a storm and swept out. Kang Dongming came over with his sword in hand. His figure was like the void, passing through the stormy void. It was still the same unhurried stab. The aura of the entire heaven and earth became incomparably sharp. The sword intent was no longer soaring into the sky, but directly penetrating into this part of the world. It had been a long time since Chu Xiu had met such a strong opponent. Even when he fought with Ling Yunzi from the Chunyang Dao sect, he was able to fight until his head bled. Although he was at a disadvantage, Ling Yunzi was also heavily injured. Facing Kang Dongming at this moment, Chu Xiu actually felt a sense of helplessness. His opponent made him feel a great deal of pressure. This was a rare situation. Transforming the world into a sword. In front of Chu Xiu, the world, mountains, and rivers were all sword intent. They attacked him like endless waves. Chu Xiu took a deep breath. He had always been the one who forced others into danger. The number of times that others had forced him into danger could be counted on one hand. If the world was a sword, then he would destroy the world. At this moment, Chu Xiu formed a seal with both hands. The ghost-like murmuring and wailing instantly rang through the world. Chu Xiu's body was already stirring up a violent and turbulent demonic aura. In an instant, the entire world seemed to have stopped. In the next moment, the heavens cry blood rain suddenly descended. The great compassion mantra of heaven and earth. Unless it was the most critical moment, Chu Xiu rarely used this technique. It was not only because the backlash of this technique was too great, but also because even Chu Xiu suspected that this technique was not created by humans. The evil aura stirred up the world. The more he used it, the more the malice would corrode Chu Xiu's mind. It was as if this technique was the embodiment of the malice of the world. However, the power of the 7 groups of compassion mantra as one was indeed powerful enough to make people tremble. Under the endless heavens cry blood rain, the sword aura melted. The entire world seemed to have begun to distort under this power. For the first time, Kong Dongming's sword momentum began to change. He withdrew his sword and cut the sky. 1 sword, 2 swords, 3 swords. With 3 swords, the endless heavens cry blood rain was actually torn apart by those 3 swords. A grave expression appeared on Chu Xiu's face. Previously, when facing the great compassion mantra of heaven and earth, the others could only resist it head-on. However, Kong Dongming actually broke the endless heavens cry blood rain with 3 swords. This kind of strength was simply shocking. Kong Dongming looked at Chu Xiu and suddenly said, "This martial technique of yours is very powerful." This was the first time that Kong Dongming spoke. It should be said that it was the first time that Chu Xiu had seen Kong Dongming since he had met him. His voice was obscure, as if he had not communicated with anyone for a long time. Even his words were extremely slow. However, after this sentence, Kong Dongming did not say anything else and continued to attack with his sword. At this moment, monstrous demon qi descended from the sky. Wei Shuya directly led Chu Wuji and the other experts of the Yinma clan over. "Not bad, at least I'm not late." Wei Shuya chuckled and waved his hand. Chu Wuji and the others also joined the battle, making up for the lack of people under Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was surprised and said, "Elder Wei, why are you here?" Actually, this time, Chu Xiu did not intend to trouble Wei Shuya. On one hand, it was because Elder Wei was indeed an elder who sincerely treated Chu Xiu well. Although he was not Chu Xiu's master, it could be said that he cultivated Chu Xiu as his successor. Although Wei Shuya had the power of the spiritual refinement realm with true fire, he was old after all. Although he had combat power, his qi and blood were still declining. Previously, when Wei Shuya helped Chu Xiu stop the Great Light Temple Su Yun, he had already shown signs of fatigue. Chu Xiu also did not want Elder Wei to continue fighting for him. This kind of intense situation was not suitable for Wei Shuya to perform. Also, when Chu Xiu formulated the plan, he had not yet come into conflict with the Great Light Temple and the Buddhist sect. At that time, the situation in northern Yen was a battle between Chu Xiu's martial suppression hall and the imperial court. It had little to do with the demon sect. If Wei Shuya joined in, it would be equivalent to the Yinma clan joining in. It was difficult to guarantee that the Chunyang Dao sect and the Great Light Temple would not be afraid because of this. As a result, they would invest more power and bring trouble. Of course, now that the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect had both suffered losses, these 2 sects were watching the show from below. Naturally, it did not matter anymore. Wei Shuya said, "You have such a big plan here. How can I turn a blind eye to it? However, I know that since you did not inform me, you should be confident. I originally did not intend to come. I heard that Situ Chi and the others also came to look for you. I was worried that something had happened, so I came to take a look." Of course, Wei Shuya did not come here because he was afraid that something would happen to Chu Xiu. In reality, based on the strength of Situ Chi and the others and their scattered situation, they could not threaten Chu Xiu. What Wei Shuya was worried about was whether their arrival would disrupt Chu Xiu's plan. He was old and useless. He couldn't help Chu Xiu much outside, but he could still be of some use in the internal affairs. This time, Situ Chi and the others did not inform him of the meeting. The meaning behind it was obvious. Wei Shuya was even prepared to fall out with them this time. However, he did not expect Situ Chi and the others to be so cowardly. As soon as they met, Chu Xiu directly mentioned Shang Tianliang, and they were immediately scared off. However, he came at the right time. On Chu Xiu's side, he was pushed to the edge by Kong Dongming, and Wei Shuya came to help. Although Kong Dongming was strong, it was not like he did not stand a chance when it was 2 against 1. Moreover, Chu Xiu was not having a fair duel with Kong Dongming. This was a fight for the throne, which concerned the future of so many people. The winner was king, and the loser was in the wrong. Of course, he had to put all his strength on the line. Therefore, after Wei Shuya arrived, Chu Xiu immediately joined forces with Wei Shuya to fight fiercely against Kong Dongming. Although Wei Shuya was old, his martial path was not just his own. It also contained the martial path left behind by the other 4 skyfiends of the 9th Heaven Mountain. When he attacked, there were endless variations. Chu Xiu was strong, and his physical body was tough, so he could take a beating. Of course, he could not let Wei Shuya be the main attacker. Therefore, he first went to fight Kong Dongming, and let Wei Shuya wait for an opportunity to attack from the side. With such a strong helper like Wei Shuya, Chu Xiu was also under a lot of pressure. However, Kong Dongming was so strong that it was unreasonable. It could be said that he was the strongest existence Chu Xiu had ever seen in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Even though Chu Xiu and Wei Shuya were fighting 2 against 1, they still could not defeat him. They could only maintain their balance. Looking at the chaos in the imperial city, where battles were everywhere, Xiang Chong's face was full of panic. Although Xiang Chong could resist, the situation was not optimistic. After all, he was relying on external objects. His own strength could not be compared to existences in the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Although Kong Dongming's strength was strong, this cheap master of his was hired with money, and he would only take action once. The other people from the Imperial Consecrator Hall were fighting. Chu Xiu's people from the Martial Suppression Hall, the warriors from Merchant City, and the demonic Dao warriors brought by Wei Shuya were turning the situation around. The future was uncertain, and his side might lose at any moment. Xiang Chong suddenly thought of something and roared, "Forefather Huangfu! I know you are here. I agree to all your conditions. Attack quickly." Chapter 959. When Xiang Chong suddenly called out the Huangfu clan's name, everyone present was taken aback. Even Chu Xiu was the same. This was because Chu Xiu had never considered that the Huangfu clan would interfere in this matter. Huangfu Song's strength wasn't considered weak, but it wasn't considered strong either. He was considered to be above average among the 9 great clans. It was only because there was little competition in the northern Yan land that the Huangfu clan suffered fewer losses and had more people. However, Patriarch Huangfu was already old, and the entire Huangfu clan had never produced any outstanding figures, so they were not considered powerful. There was no point for the Huangfu clan to interfere in this fight for the throne. They were people of the pugilistic world and a noble clan to begin with. What were they trying to do by interfering in the fight for the throne? Are we going to rebel? If they chose to help Xiangli, Chu Xiu would not agree to it. This was akin to snatching food. If they helped Xiang Chong, they would offend Chu Xiu. They would not be in his good graces no matter what. As long as the Huangfu clan's patriarch's head was not squeezed by the door, Chu Xiu believed that he would definitely not get involved in this mess. Moreover, Daoist Wuyang was right beside Xiang Chong. If Xiang Chong had come into contact with the Huangfu clan, Daoist Wuyang would have reported to him. However, at this moment, a long laugh suddenly rang out. "Does your highness really keep your promise?" As soon as he finished speaking, Ancestor Huangfu and the hundreds of elites of the Huangfu clan had opened the palace gates and entered the imperial city. Chu Xiu's expression instantly changed when he witnessed this scene. The Huangfu clan has actually participated in it. Chu Xiu turned to look at Daoist Wuyang and shouted angrily, Xiang Chong has allied with the Huangfu clan. How could you not know such important news? At this moment, Daoist Wuyang was leading the Shade Mountain sect in a head-on battle with the group of old eunuchs in the palace. Seeing this, he was also dumbfounded because he really did not know about this matter. Xiang Chong had already treated him as a confidant and was practically inseparable. How could Xiang Chong have met with the Huangfu clan? Actually, this matter could not be blamed on Daoist Wuyang's incompetence. It could only be said that it was too much of a coincidence. Xiang Chong had never seen anyone from the Huangfu clan, and the Huangfu clan didn't send anyone to see Xiang Chong either. The person who facilitated the cooperation between the two sides was an unexpected person, Lin Fengyu. Whether it was in the eyes of Chu Xiu or Daoist Wuyang, Lin Fengyu was a standard piece of trash, unable to accomplish anything but good at spoiling things. But even trash had good luck. In the face of Daoist Wuyang's pressure, Lin Fengyu had done many foolish things. In the end, he had courted death by provoking Chu Xiu. As a result, he had been slapped to death by Chu Xiu. However, before he courted death, he did a lot of stupid things. Most of them ended up as a joke, but the only successful one was the Huangfu clan incident. Just like what Chu Xiu had thought before, the Huangfu clan's participation in this fight for the throne was akin to wading into muddy waters. He wouldn't be able to gain any benefits at all and would only be looking for trouble. Any normal person would think this way, so no one contacted the Huangfu clan. However, Lin Fengyu was no normal person. Instead, this idiot went to contact the Huangfu clan, and actually managed to facilitate half of this matter by a freak combination of factors. He got the Huangfu clan to agree, but Xiang Chong didn't agree to their conditions. Lin Fengyu had only told Xiang Chong about this matter. Naturally, Daoist Wuyang didn't know anything. In fact, he couldn't be blamed for being careless. Who would care about a piece of trash like Lin Fengyu? Paying attention to him was simply a waste of time. While fending off Kong Dongming, Chu Xiu said coldly, Ancestor Huangfu, you are a veteran of the pugilistic world. You should know what you can and cannot interfere in. Do you think you have the right to interfere in today's situation? Are you tired of living after eating arsenic? Or are you looking for some excitement and play a big game before you die? Facing an existence like Ancestor Huangfu, Chu Xiu didn't have the slightest bit of courtesy. If it wasn't for the fact that the Huangfu clan hadn't provoked him much, why wouldn't the martial suppression hall in the northern Yen cause trouble for the Huangfu clan? Chu Xiu's words were extremely sharp and unkind. Ancestor Huangfu's face immediately darkened after being insulted. However, he didn't lose his temper and ignored Chu Xiu. Instead, he turned to Xiang Chong and said in a deep voice, Your Highness, are you really willing to marry the daughter of the Huangfu clan, make her the empress after you ascend the throne, and make your first son the crown prince? Xiang Chong gritted his teeth and said, Yes. I'm willing. Ancestor Huangfu, hurry up and do it. Hearing this, the crowd went into an uproar. Even the northern Yen royalty who had been watching the show looked at Xiang Chong. Chu Xiu finally understood why the Huangfu clan was willing to get involved in this mess and why Xiang Chong didn't agree to it from the start. The Huangfu clan wanted to become in-laws with the northern Yen royalty and become a relative of the northern Yen emperor. Over the years, the northern Yen royalty had a simple way of choosing their empress. Most of them were commoners or daughters from wealthy families. They rarely chose daughters from noble families in the military because they were afraid that a relative would affect the foundation of the northern Yen. Of course, to think deeper, they were afraid that the emperor would become too powerful with the support of his relatives, even to the point where he could stand up to all the royal families of northern Yen. If that happened, would the royal family of northern Yen be Xiang, or something else? Xiang Chong wasn't an idiot. This was a sensitive matter. If he agreed, he would gain the support of the Huangfu clan, but it would also mean that his interests would be inseparable from the Huangfu clan. At that time, not to mention what the Huangfu clan would do, he would offend the entire Xiang clan. Therefore, when Lin Fengyu excitedly told him about the Huangfu clan's condition, Xiang Chong didn't agree at all. He wanted to ask if the Huangfu clan could change their condition and he would do his best to satisfy them. However, the Huangfu clan was very stubborn. They only had one condition and they were determined not to change it. Originally, Xiang Chong had already rejected this matter. However, the Huangfu clan had previously said that Xiang Chong could just ask them if he needed them. Xiang Chong was also forced to a dead end. He wanted to test if the Huangfu clan's words were true. He didn't expect the Huangfu clan to really come. At this moment, they had already reached the point where their true intentions were revealed. Either they lived or died. A bit of power was also power. He could no longer care about what would happen in the future, nor did he care if he would offend the Xiang royal family. What Xiang Chong wanted was the throne. Chu Xiu took a deep breath. While temporarily blocking Kong Dongming, he said to the Huangfu clan, "Is the Huangfu clan really going to get involved in this mess? In terms of strength, the Huangfu clan isn't weak. You've been in the northern Yan for so many years and you've never been aggressive. You've lived peacefully with the surrounding forces. Therefore, I'm very confused. You should know the risks involved. Do you think the Huangfu clan can become the leader of the 9 great clans just because they've become a foreign relative of the northern Yan?" The Huangfu clan shook his head and said, "The Huangfu clan isn't weak, but we're not strong either. What's wrong with pursuing greater strength? When we were at our peak, we were close to the Shangshuaying clan. If we were to be complacent because of our current strength, then we'd be in deep sorrow. The northern Yan is in turmoil. How can the Huangfu clan be willing to be a bystander? Fortune comes from risk. Success or failure is determined by the heavens. You, Chu Xiu, have risked your life many times. Why can't the Huangfu clan do the same?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and looked at the Huangfu clan. He had a feeling that the old man wasn't telling the truth. Among the leaders of the 9 great clans, the Huangfu clan wasn't the strongest, but he wasn't the weakest either. However, he was the most cautious. It was common in the pugilistic world to have a grudge with someone, but when did the Huangfu clan have a grudge with someone? Of course, in the pugilistic world, it was impossible to not offend anyone. However, the Huangfu clan had always only offended those they could afford to offend. They were extremely cautious towards those they couldn't afford to offend. He was still on Xiang Chong's side in the struggle for the northern Yan royalty. Externally, he had offended Chu Xiu. Internally, he would be a threat to the Xiang clan. What was he after? All he wanted was a gamble? In any case, Chu Xiu didn't believe it. However, it didn't matter whether he believed it or not. Since the Huangfu clan was involved in this matter, they had to be prepared to pay the price. It would be naive of them to think that they could escape unscathed from making an enemy out of Chu Xiu. At this moment, Wei Shuya suddenly said, "Make a move first. Get rid of the Huangfu clan's old man. I will hold off Kong Dongming." The Huangfu clan's participation was something that Chu Xiu hadn't expected. Once they interfered, the situation immediately became disadvantageous to Chu Xiu. If they didn't settle this quickly, the outcome would be unpredictable. However, Chu Xiu hesitated and said, "But Kong Dongming." Chu Xiu had witnessed Kong Dongming's strength. It was terrifying. Chu Xiu was confident that he could hold off Kong Dongming for the time being, but Wei Shuya was old after all. He wouldn't be able to last more than a few moves. Wei Shuya laughed and said, "Don't worry, this old man isn't so old that I'm useless. I can still hold off for a while. Of course, you have to be quick on your side. Otherwise, my old bones won't be able to take more than a few strikes from this Eastern Sea Sword Saint." Hearing Wei Shuya's words, Chu Xiu didn't hesitate. he wasn't a wishy-washy person to begin with. He broke away from the battle and charged at Ancestor Huangfu. Looking at the figure of Chu Xiu dashing over, a blood-malevolent qi gushed out from the heavens all of a sudden. This torrential demonic qi swept out, causing the heart of old Ancestor Huangfu to shudder. Ancestor Huangfu didn't have much of a grudge against Chu Xiu before, so he naturally hadn't faced Chu Xiu in such a state. Now that he sensed the terrifying aura coming from Chu Xiu, even he had to admit that he was getting old. Each generation had its own talents, and it was time for his generation to retire from the martial world. However, he still had to fight for his family one last time before he left the martial world. However, Patriarch Huangfu did something that shocked everyone present. He took out a spear. To be precise, it was a broken blood-colored spear with 1/5 of its handle broken off. With a wave of his hand, Ancestor Huangfu's blood gushed into the broken spear, filling up the broken part with fresh blood. In an instant, boundless blood-colored light bloomed. Ancestor Huangfu was fighting with his life on the line. Chapter 960. No one had expected Patriarch Huangfu to act this way. The fight for the throne was a battle to the death between Xiang Chong and Xiang Li. For the sake of the future son-in-law of the Huangfu clan, you went to such great lengths and even used your blood energy to repair the blood spear in his hand. Isn't this price a little too high? You're putting your life on the line. In fact, Chu Xiu's prediction was right. Ancestor Huangfu's sudden change in attitude, abandoning his cautious way of doing things, and risking his life to participate in the fight for the throne was not as simple as it seemed. Most importantly, he was about to die. No one knew how old Huangfu Ancestor really was. He had never been too ostentatious when he was young, and he had always been protecting the Huangfu clan when he was old. Even in the past 100 years, the number of battles he had fought could be counted. The last time he fought was against Jianghu, but he did not use his full strength even though he was bullying the weak. It wasn't that his lifespan was nearing its end, but an internal injury he suffered when he was young had flared up. The injury had been lurking in his body for nearly 200 years, and he had always thought that it would be fine. He didn't expect it to suddenly erupt this time and almost cost him his life. Patriarch Huangfu had secretly sought out countless renowned doctors in the pugilistic world, but none of them could cure it. The internal injury had already taken root in his body, and he wouldn't be able to withstand another 2 outbursts. It happened so suddenly that Patriarch Huangfu didn't even have time to consider where the Huangfu clan should go from here. With his protection in the past, the Huangfu clan could still develop slowly and cautiously until the next successor could be nurtured. But now, he was suddenly dead. Who knew what the Huangfu clan would face next? Although the Huangfu clan rarely made enemies with others, he knew better than anyone after spending his life in the pugilistic world that there was no love without reason in the pugilistic world, but there was hatred without reason. Was there a need for a reason to annihilate a clan and attack others? There was no need. Even Patriarch Huangfu was wary of Chu Xiu. Based on Chu Xiu's domineering personality, if he helped Xiang Li ascend to the throne, the Northern Yan martial world would respect him for sure. By that time, would he still be able to tolerate the Huangfu clan? These were all things that could not be predicted. Thus, during the last moments of his life, he decided to fight for the Huangfu clan before the second internal injury flared up again. For so many years, the Huangfu clan had been accustomed to a comfortable life. But it had to be known that the glory of the Huangfu clan in the past was obtained through numerous seemingly dangerous incidents. He held the scarlet demonic spear in his hand. After being repaired by Patriarch Huangfu's blood energy, the spear was already glowing with a ferocious blood-red light. The entire body of the spear seemed to be forged from fresh blood. Holding onto the spear, Huangfu Ancestor could even hear the cries and wails of countless vengeful spirits coming from within. God knew how many people had died to this demonic spear. He had obtained this spear when he was young. In order to obtain it, he was ambushed and left with a fatal internal injury. In order to obtain it, he even betrayed his good friend and killed his brother for the treasure. But the funny thing was, he had never used this spear for so many years because the price was too high. Only now, when he was on the brink of death, did he finally use it. One had to say that fate really made a fool out of him. While everyone's attention was on Patriarch Huangfu, Lu Jianghu roared from inside the blood soul orb, blood-red tea. It's the scarlet handle. Why is this spear in this old man's hands? Who broke the blood-red handle? Chu Xiu was stunned. Scarlet handle? That's the name of the spear? Do you recognize this spear? Lu Jianghu quickly answered, of course I do. The 3 divine weapons of the holy sect should be called the 3 demonic weapons to be more accurate. They are the sect leader's demonic saber, listen to spring rain, the red lotus demon venerable's demonic sword, yearning, and the Jianghu demon venerable's demonic spear, scarlet handle. The scarlet handle is said to be made from human bones. It's made from the bones of ancient ethereal enlightenment experts and is pure white in color. But as the Jianghu demon venerable killed countless people with the scarlet handle, blood dyed the bones red and seeped into them, turning the spear blood red. Among the 3 demonic weapons, the scarlet handle has the most blood on it, even more than the sect leaders listen to spring rain. Of course, to the sect leader, ordinary trash isn't worthy of him fighting. At least, they aren't even qualified to see listen to spring rain. Then why is it called the scarlet handle? Lu Jianghu chuckled and said, you should know what a scarlet handle is. Those guys who were pierced by the Jianghu demon venerable's spear. Because the spear was too fast, the blood that gushed out condensed into a ball. Doesn't it look like a crystal clear, blood-red scarlet handle? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect the legendary demonic weapon of the Kunlun devil cult to be in ancestor Huangfu's hands. Chu Xiu had seen the demon sword, yearning. It was obtained by the sword-concealing mountain villa and was now in the hands of the phaseless demon sect. The demonic spear, scarlet handle, had also appeared. The only thing left was Dugu Weiwei's listen to spring rain. Ancestor Huangfu held the scarlet handle and said in a deep voice, using demonic weapons to deal with demonic sects, it's really fate playing tricks on people. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, fate is playing tricks on you, not me. Your Huangfu clan is really a good person. You know that our 3 demonic weapons were lost in the past, so you specially sent this to us? Ancestor Huangfu snorted coldly. He didn't bicker with Chu Xiu because he didn't have the time to do so. Patriarch Huangfu held the scarlet sword in his hand. Although it was a demonic weapon, it didn't show any signs of rejection because Patriarch Huangfu had repaired it with his own blood. Actually, a weapon was just a weapon. It didn't matter what demonic or divine weapon it was. The most important thing was who was holding it. Golden gang qi shone around ancestor Huangfu's body, but the blood spear shone with boundless blood radiance. As the spear descended, the ferocious aura seemed to have turned into a sea of blood that gushed towards Chu Xiu. Compared to the broken longing yearning sword, the damage to the blood-red handle was very low. Only the handle was broken, and even the weapon spirit was still alive. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows at the ferocious might of this spear thrust. This had clearly exceeded his expectations. Does the scarlet handle have any weaknesses? Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghu. Lu Jianghu rolled his eyes and said, how can a weapon have any obvious weaknesses? In the past, the Jianghu demon lord was known as the #1 battle general of the Kunlun demon sect. His martial path was similar to that of Emperor Chen Qingdi. They were both existences who had tempered their bodies to the extreme. As long as they could use weapons, they wouldn't even want to use their fists. Against the scarlet handle, there's no other way but to take its power head-on. Chu Xiu looked down. Ever since the Huangfu clan interfered, the situation became even more chaotic. Wei Shuya was still trying his best to hold off Kong Dongming. He really didn't have much time left. Therefore, at the next moment, Chu Xiu's inner force, true fire and scorching Buddhist light burst out at the same time. Two extremely domineering powers surged into the peerless heavenly saber in his hand. He slashed down with the sea-cleaving saber intent, and in that instant, the powerful force seemed to tear the void apart. Old ancestor Huangfu's mind was already immersed in the scarlet handle. With the support of his vital energy and blood, his control over the scarlet handle could be said to be second only to the previous owner of this weapon. The extremely fierce spear collided with Chu Xiu's sea-cleaving saber intent. The power that erupted from both sides directly caused a deafening bang. The spirit arrays under their feet began to flash one by one, but they were soon extinguished one after another. It was just like when Kong Dongming and Chu Xiu fought before. They had clearly triggered the protection of the spirit arrays, but in the next moment, the spirit arrays were unable to withstand the powerful force and shattered. The strength of the attack between the two sides was already comparable to the power of Kong Dongming's sword strike. At this time, on the Xiang royal clan side, the people of the Xiang royal clan were actually a little flustered as they watched this group of people fight more and more fiercely. Originally, the Xiang royal clan's old ancestor was still very calm, but as Chu Xiu revealed one trump card after another, and then the Huangfu clan inexplicably intervened, there were too many forces participating in this inheritance war, and the scale was beyond their imagination. If there was still no result after a while, the people of the Xiang royal clan were already planning to take action. Old ancestor Huangfu's hand holding the spear was trembling slightly. This was the first time he had used the blood-red lotus. This divine weapon, which used to belong to one of the 4 demon commanders of the Kunlun devil cult, was indeed very strong, even stronger than he had imagined. However, Chu Xiu, who he was facing, was also stronger than he had imagined. The two sides seemed to be evenly matched, but in fact, he was the one who suffered the most. He had barely used his vitality to repair the blood-red lotus, and every attack consumed old ancestor Huangfu's vitality. In this way, if he still couldn't defeat Chu Xiu after a few dozen moves, he could just commit suicide. But before he could come up with a countermeasure, Chu Xiu attacked again. Boundless demon chi appeared around Chu Xiu's body. With one arm holding the bow and the other holding the bowstring, the triple annihilation arrow burst out. The arrow, which was stained with the power of nirvanic extermination, arrived in front of old ancestor Huangfu almost instantly. Old ancestor Huangfu snorted coldly and thrust out the blood-red lotus to collide with the arrow. With a loud bang, the arrow shattered, but endless world-extinguishing fire burst out from the arrow and engulfed old ancestor Huangfu in the blink of an eye. Surrounded by the boundless world-extinguishing fire, old ancestor Huangfu formed a seal with his hands. In an instant, the whole world seemed to turn upside down as endless yuan qi attacked each other from top to bottom like an hourglass. Under the pressure of this force, old ancestor Huangfu was able to completely extinguish the world-extinguishing fire, but Chu Xiu had already arrived in front of him. Chapter 961. To Chu Xiu, Patriarch Huangfu was never a threat. It was the same even with the demonic weapon, the blood-red lantern. Was there a need for him to risk his life for someone who could only barely contend with him by relying on an external object? He was not even qualified for Chu Xiu to go all out. However, time was of the essence. The battle below was in a stalemate, and Wei Shuya was still struggling to fend off Kong Dongming. Chu Xiu did not have the time to fool around with Patriarch Huangfu. The moment he neutralized the triple city extinguishing arrow, Chu Xiu had already rushed up to fight Patriarch Huangfu. Chu Xiu's every slash was at its peak. Ancestor Huangfu's body would tremble every time they collided. It was obvious that he was unable to withstand the powerful force. Lu Jiang, he sneered in disdain inside the blood soul bead. The Jianghu demon venerable was the top warrior of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. His physical cultivation was shocking, and he could even smash the Great Light Temple's Buddha golden body. This old man looks like he's about to die. He can't even unleash a tenth of the blood-red lantern's power. Although Lu Jianghe's words were harsh, he was right. Patriarch Huangfu was not a spear user, and his martial path was not inclined towards close combat. Although he had the power to forcefully unleash the blood-red lantern, he could not unleash much of its power. In fact, forefather Huangfu could sense it himself. After all, he was a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator, and he had been through hundreds of battles when he was young. Sensing that something was wrong, Patriarch Huangfu clenched his teeth. If this went on, Chu Xiu would be fine, but he would be exhausted to the point where his qi and blood would dissipate. After blocking Chu Xiu's slash with his spear, Patriarch Huangfu retreated quickly. He reached out his hand and drew a strange rune in the air, and a trace of primordial spirit pulsed around him. The golden primordial spirit light enveloped the blood-red sword, which made Chu Xiu instinctively feel that something was wrong. He shot out the triple city annihilation arrow again. But this time, Ancestor Huangfu didn't do anything. The blood-red handle in his hand floated into the air on its own, and with a sweep of his spear, a violent burst of blood energy erupted and shattered the triple city destruction arrow. At this time, everyone present also knew what was going on, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air. They even suspected that Patriarch Huangfu wasn't here to fight for the throne. Did Chu Xiu kill his grandson or sleep with his granddaughter? Was there a need to be so desperate? Patriarch Huangfu wasn't burning his blood essence, but his nascent spirit. The crimson scarlet handle was a general-level weapon, so forefather Huangfu was unable to unleash its full potential with his current strength. Using the blood-red lotus was actually a burden to Huangfu ancestor himself. Therefore, he simply burned the power of his primordial spirit and injected it into the blood-red grapes. The weapon spirit within the blood-red grapes was still present. Although it was slightly damaged, it was still complete. It still retained the memories of Demon Venerable Jianghu using it to fight in the past. Therefore, Patriarch Huangfu simply used his own primordial spirit as fuel to nourish the weapon spirit, allowing the blood-red grapes to attack. However, burning one's primordial spirit wasn't the same as burning one's blood essence. The loss of blood essence could still be recovered, but once one's primordial spirit was ignited, it would result in an injury that could never be healed. Of course, this didn't matter to Patriarch Huangfu anymore. After all, he was already prepared to die. Amidst the boundless golden radiance of the primordial spirit, the blood-red grapes pierced towards Chu Xiu with surging blood-fiendish qi. It was as if it was dragging a monstrous sea of blood behind it. The sea splitter slashed out and clashed with the spear. In that instant, a loud sound rang out, and a series of tremors spread out in all directions. The might was terrifying. However, the blood-red grapes didn't seem to be damaged at all. The spear's momentum was unrestrained, and its battle intent soared into the sky. Even Chu Xiu was being suppressed by it. Demon Venerable Jianghu was already so powerful in the past. Even a demonic weapon he left behind is so powerful. The power of the blood-red grapes far exceeded Chu Xiu's expectations. If a weapon was already so powerful, no matter how powerful the blood-red grapes were, it couldn't be as powerful as the human king's sword, right? Lu Jianghe said, "What's powerful isn't the blood-red grapes, but the imprint left behind by Demon Venerable Jianghu when he fought against others with the blood-red grapes. That old man is burning the power of his primordial spirit to nourish the blood-red grapes. Most importantly, the pure power of his primordial spirit is enough to repair the damaged weapon spirit to a perfect state, completely activating the imprint left behind by Demon Venerable Jianghu in the past. So, you're not fighting against that old man or a demonic weapon. You're fighting against the imprint left behind by Demon Venerable Jianghu in the past. You should be satisfied that you're able to fight like this." Chu Xiu frowned when he heard that. He looked around. With the addition of the Huangfu clan, his side was already at a disadvantage. After all, Chu Xiu was basically fighting against the imperial family's Hall of Consecrators, the imperial guards, and the many experts of the Huangfu clan all by himself. Wei Shiya had already blocked a few of Kang Dongming's attacks. He was barely able to block them. If this dragged on, Wei Shiya would probably be in danger as well. There wasn't much time left for Chu Xiu. At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He suddenly said, "You're saying that the artifact spirit can remember everything about Demon Venerable Jianghu when he wielded it?" Lu Jiang he was baffled. Of course. The blood-red handle is a supreme-grade weapon. The artifact spirit is already strong enough. Isn't it normal for it to remember these things? A strange look flashed across Chu Xiu's eyes. He suddenly thought of a way to get rid of this blood-red handle as soon as possible. When the blood-red handle's spear struck again, Chu Xiu's body instantly erupted with demonic aura. In that instant, Chu Xiu raised his demonic powers to the extreme. After blocking the blood-red handle with his saber, Chu Xiu didn't retreat, nor did he continue to attack. Instead, he reached out and grabbed the tip of the blood-red handle. Even though Chu Xiu had successfully refined his body with true fire and his physical body was able to withstand divine weapons, the blood-red rapier was a supreme-grade divine weapon that belonged to Demon Exalt Jianghu. Its sharpness was terrifying. Therefore, in an instant, a stream of blood flowed out from Chu Xiu's hand, seeping into the blood-red rapier. Everyone was stunned at the sight of this. What was Chu Xiu doing? Was he committing suicide or was he courting death? But in the next moment, an unexpected scene appeared. The moment Chu Xiu's blood seeped into the blood-red handle, it actually shuddered and retracted its murderous aura and killing intent. Even the pure primordial spirit power that Ancestor Huangfu had provided to it was expelled from its body, allowing itself to be held by Chu Xiu obediently. The backlash from the primordial spirit caused Ancestor Huangfu to spit out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with despair and disbelief. The others were the same, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Although weapons recognized their masters, since Ancestor Huangfu was able to use the blood-red handle, it meant that the artifact spirit wasn't the type that only recognized one master in its life. As long as it was given the power to kill, anyone could use the blood-red handle. Yet, the blood-red handle had retracted its power before Chu Xiu. Was he the reincarnation of Demon Venerable Jianghu? Even Lu Jiang he couldn't understand what was going on, but Chu Xiu heaved a sigh of relief. His guess was right. The fact that the blood-red handle would retract its power and stay in Chu Xiu's hand obediently had nothing to do with Demon Venerable Jianghu, but Dugu Weiwei. Previously, Lu Jiang he said that the blood-red handle's artifact spirit had memories. Since it could remember the times when it fought alongside Demon Venerable Jianghu, it could naturally remember Dugu Weiwei's aura. Although Chu Xiu had no idea what the relationship between Dugu Weiwei and Dugu Weiwei was, he had once absorbed a droplet of Dugu Weiwei's blood. The droplet of blood had fused with Chu Xiu's body and even brought him a surge of power. Afterwards, Lu Jiang he said that it was the power cultivated from Dugu Weiwei's indestructible devil tome. However, that power had only appeared briefly and never appeared again. So this time, Chu Xiu was also gambling on the fact that Dugu Weiwei's power still remained in his body. After absorbing Chu Xiu's blood, the blood-red handle might be able to recall something. Now, it seemed that it was indeed the case. Not only did it remember its master, it also remembered its master's power. Just as Chu Xiu was about to put Shuihongti into the secret space box, Shuihongti's body suddenly reflected a wave of energy back. In an instant, the space in front of Chu Xiu's eyes changed. What appeared in front of him was a stretch of scorched land that had been set ablaze by the flames of war. Countless true qi and gang qi shone, and the sounds of weapons clashing and the cries of martial artists rang out continuously. Blood rushed into the sky, and a murderous aura filled the air. On one side of the battlefield, there were all kinds of martial artists. Their faces could not be seen clearly, but some of them were wearing monk robes, some were wearing Daoist robes, some were holding long swords, and some were wearing armor. It was obvious that this was an alliance of countless forces from the pugilistic world. And on the other side, there was a figure that Chu Xiu was very familiar with standing at the forefront. His black robes fluttered in the wind, and he held a scimitar in his hand. The scimitar's body was like a crescent moon, and the blade was a dazzling scarlet. With the crescent moon in front, the blood-red light of the blade was even more dazzling than the light of the sun. There was also a small horizontal line of words carved on the blade, a knight in the small building listening to the spring rain. Dugu Weiwei. At this moment, Chu Xiu understood that what he was seeing should be a scene of the great battle between the Kunlun devil cult and the orthodox sects in the past, which had been recorded by Blood-Red Handle. Looking around, he saw a woman wearing a bright red robe standing behind Dugu Weiwei, holding the demon sword Long Yearning in her hand. There was also a skinny martial artist shrouded in a black robe, and an existence that could not be seen at all, directly shrouded in black fog. And the one closest to Chu Xiu's vision was a burly martial artist wearing armor. The one holding the demon sword Long Yearning should be Demon Venerable Red Lotus, and the one wearing armor should be Demon Venerable Jianghu. As for the other two, they should be the other two demon venerables of the Kunlun devil cult. Chu Xiu even saw Lu Jianghe, but at this moment, Lu Jianghe did not have the right to stand with Dugu Weiwei and the others. Instead, he stood at the back and peeked at Demon Venerable Red Lotus's curvy back, looking a little wretched. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.